The dark web is where humanity's darkest secrets hide. Illegal marketplaces, unimaginable crimes, and things society tries to erase all thrive here, often without consequence. Some sites were short-lived, some highly profitable, and some so disturbing even seasoned investigators couldn't handle them, and the people behind them rarely ever face punishment. And today, we're skipping the Silk Road and the stories you've heard 100 times over. Instead, we're diving into some unknown dark web websites. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And we're starting with one that is beyond disgusting. Pink, and I can't say the other word because of YouTube's guidelines, so pink crystal. Think about the Breaking Bad substance they cooked up. So yeah, pink crystal. In 2015, the world's biggest adult content website, you know the one, implemented a method for people to report revenge videos on their site. From that point on, if you came across some illicit content of yourself, which I imagine is horrifying, one click will take it off the website. But not every website is so inclined to help you. In fact, some have made a business out of it. Revenge videos became a prevalent problem in the early 2000s. Before then, it wasn't unheard of. Many people were caught sharing illicit photos of their exes, but the difference is, these incidences were isolated, often shared among close friends, which is gross to say, but that's like max 20 people. Your standard loser didn't have the resources to humiliate their ex on the macro. But when the 2000s rolled around, people had more reach. Social media, chat forums, emails, cell phones, and cell phone cameras. Gone were the days of professional adult videos. Now anyone could make one. And worse, anyone could share it. Not with a couple of people, but with countless thousands. Now, with every bad breakup loomed the possibility that private images or videos could be leaked onto the internet. And I hate to say this, but there's a ton of people who couldn't care less about consent. In fact, they enjoy non-consensual exposure. Now, thankfully, this stuff doesn't survive on the surface web anymore. Most adult websites have safeguards in place to prevent it, but the dark web has no such rules. For the purposes of this video, I can't say the actual name of the website, so we'll refer to it as Pink Breaking Bad Crystal, or Pink Crystal for short. Pink Crystal was a website dedicated to revenge videos. It was built in a similar way to 4chan, designed as an image board, where users could post illicit photos. But like we just discussed, none of these photos were posted consensually. In fact, some of them weren't even acquired consensually. I'm not sure of the actual details, but essentially, Pink Crystal users would hack into people's accounts and steal their intimate photos. One example is a woman named Shelby, I won't say her last name for privacy reasons, who actually sued Pink Crystal. She was a college student at the time, living in Texas and enjoying an uneventful life, but her days of peace were about to come to an end. According to court documents, Pink Crystal somehow gained access to Shelby's private photos, ones that had never been shared with anyone, and posted them. When Shelby found out, she was horrified, obviously. She contacted the administrators to take it down, and they not only refused, they harassed her. How, you might ask? Well, they had a Twitter page where they would post about people who were being exposed. I'm not joking. These people were demented. They would take non-consensual videos, post the links to Twitter, and then tag the person's social media pages, rallying their fan base to go harass these women. Shelby received death threats, threats of assault, and by the time she had discovered the images, it was too late. The damage was done. Previously, she had dreams of joining law enforcement. Of her own admittance, the dream was made impossible by Pink Crystal. To make matters worse, the lawsuit failed. In similar cases, the defendant often receives a settlement from the people who operate the website, and those people typically receive jail time because revenge videos are criminal. But there was a problem with Pink Crystal. No one knew who was operating it. To this day, No known person has ever been charged for the indecency allowed on Pink Crystal. When an official investigation began, they tried to track down the owners. When they discovered that whoever was running it was functionally untraceable, domain registration, admin accounts, operator records, all purposefully obscured. How? Well, the host company, Katz Global Media, offered a service to register untraceable domains. Even they couldn't figure out who these people were. After the attempted lawsuit, Pink Crystal was under heavy scrutiny. Before then, they operated on the surface web. But after a public backlash, the cowards retreated to the dark web to avoid a shutdown. Now, normally, a shutdown wouldn't matter too much. After all, they're just sick people looking for a rush. But Pink Crystal was different. Pink Crystal was monetized. Most of the time, these kinds of websites run banner ads and pop-ups. So even though we don't know an exact figure, we can use similar websites like Is Anyone Up to approximate their earnings. Is Anyone Up was a similar revenge video site, the first one to ever hit the mainstream. And because of its shutdown in 2012, we know that the owner, Hunter Moore, was making $13,000 a month on ad revenue alone. For 2 more years, the site continued to torment its victims from the dark recesses of the internet until 2014, when the FBI, in action with Europol, successfully shut down Pink Crystal. Over the years, the anonymous owners have attempted to relaunch the site to no avail. Luckily, today they are permanently offline. The Iron Troll website has archived some Twitter posts. All of the names and links have been redacted or are inactive. But scrolling through, it's easy to see how horrible this website truly was. I can only imagine the lasting impact it had on the people who were exposed. And unfortunately, I'm sure there are other websites just like Pink Crystal surviving today, somewhere down deep in the dark web. Archetype market. Now, this might just be because I'm a YouTuber or I'm chronically online, but from my perspective, everyone and their grandma knows about the Silk Road by now. We've talked about it before on the channel, and for the few of you who haven't heard of it, the Silk Road was a website running from 2011 to 2013 that operated as an online drug marketplace. And frankly, I'm sick of hearing about it. I'm sick of writing about it, and I think it ties into a problem YouTube is having when it comes to dark web material. When the internet was new and scary, the websites hosted on untraceable browsers seemed like the most horrifying things online. But as the internet got older, and I did too, I started to notice that most of the videos talking about dark web websites were the same old, tired, recycled ones we saw 10 years ago. It's interesting to say that something like the internet's first drug dealer marketplace, hidden from the surface web, feels more like history to talk about than an actual story. And personally, I don't like covering old news. So when I came across Archetype Market in my research, I was very excited to share it all with you. Let's start at the beginning. A boy is living his life in Germany. He was young when the Berlin Wall fell, 5 years old, and grows up in the shadow of poverty it created. He's in close contact with drugs from an early age and begins experimenting. When I was younger, I thought I was invincible. I thought I was smarter than everyone else, so I skillfully ignored every warning and did what I felt like every day. Since I was a teenager, I've tried different drugs, but I have to say that alcohol was the worst drug for me. But this is probably also due to the environment and the circumstances. But like any young man, he wants to create something of his own. Him and his buddies get drunk and start thinking up ideas for a website. Something new. Something that would bring them out of poverty. But it never gets anywhere. He's stuck. Then, at the age of 20, he began his journey with hallucinogens. When I consumed hallucinogens for the first time, I felt like someone had just given me the gift of critical thinking. I started to question a lot of things. Firstly, why I'm drunk almost every day. I realized that I'm very far from what I imagined for my future when I was still a child. As a child, I always wanted to practice a social profession and do something good for the world and for my fellow human beings. But at that time, I actually did exactly the opposite. I showed antisocial behavior and got on everyone's bad side as best as I could. I think that was also my ego death. I realized and perceived many things that I did not perceive before. After my first trip, I wanted to do it again, quickly, and took 4 more trips within a few months. After the 4th trip, I had a new self-image and didn't want to drink alcohol anymore. I stopped drinking alcohol overnight and haven't had a drink for over a year. I started to focus on the goals of my childhood, and of course, I have also set myself some new goals. Cue the Silk Road. The boy, now a man, sees the work of Ross Ulbricht, creator of the Silk Road, and is inspired. He starts to develop his own ideology, a belief that drugs shouldn't be illegal. He believes that drugs in all forms aren't necessarily evil. They aren't good, they aren't bad, they just are. And he begins to believe that drugs shouldn't be criminalized in Europe. After all, it's a victimless crime. If he created a marketplace, it would be to further his political ideal, that true freedom means illicit substances are legalized. But he doesn't like the actions of Ross Ulbricht. It was clear to our young man here that Ross was motivated by greed. He believed that a new website could do some good, give freedom to the people, and destigmatize the industry. All of what I just described was from a German interview conducted with our young man in 2021. He had developed an archetypal sense of manhood. He wanted to do what he believed was his duty. His name was Mark Hegemeister, and he founded Archetype Market, the longest running online drug marketplace ever created. Launched in 2020, Archetype Market hit the ground running, wanting to be different from the Silk Road. Arms trafficking wasn't allowed, no personal listings. It was an unadulterated online store solely for drugs. The website had 6 vetted distributors, covering a couple of different bases. I won't list what drugs were sold. I don't want YouTube to flag me, but they sold most of the popular narcotics we see today. Mark studied the Silk Road and learned from Ross Ulbricht's mistakes. He made sure no communications were done from personal emails, no identifying information was on the site, and everything was deeply encoded. He implemented a cryptocurrency called Monero for transactions to keep everything totally anonymous. Most other drug marketplaces today are taken down quickly, but because of his efforts, Archetype Market survived for 5 years, which is basically unheard of in 2025. But it wouldn't last forever. Europe was hot on his heels. Agencies all over the continent were on the hunt for this new drug lord. Ideology or not, good intentions or not, he needed to be taken down. The fact of the matter is, freedom or not, people die on drugs. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives to the free-minded ideology Mark Hegemeister supported, and unfortunately for him, he was the top marketplace on tour, and with that exposure came his downfall. Operation Deep Sentinel was born. A sentinel is a guard, a soldier, whose job is to keep watch over something and keep the people safe. Operation Deep Sentinel was a joint effort between Europol and police agencies from 44 different countries to protect the people and clean up the dark web. And after half a decade, they finally seized the website and arrested Mark in June of 2025. Now, let's not get it twisted. Mark was a drug dealer, plain and simple. His actions probably resulted in deaths, countless families being damaged or destroyed, and I only wish he would have used his passion for something else. Because maybe he could have done the world some good. But today, Mark is in jail, awaiting trial, and Archetype Market joins the graveyard of similar marketplaces, never to return. Welcome to video. Of all the entries on this list, this one is the most sickening, bar none. In June of 2015, a website launches on the Tor browser, and very quickly, it picked up traffic. Their service, selling videos. Many videos. Some had been circling around the internet for years. Some were brand new. But the owner wanted a place to keep them all. A marketplace for sharing these videos to the widest possible audience. And as you may have guessed by now, these videos were terrifying and about children. Now, I want to say really quickly, I read the comments, I hear you all, and I don't want to keep saying cheese pizza. But unfortunately, even the more respectful term you've all been recommending gets flagged by YouTube. I know many of you have been requesting I begin using the other term, and I want to. I want to be as respectful as possible when covering these cases, but unfortunately, YouTube doesn't like us even using those terms. And with that said, I think stories like these are very important to talk about. Exposing these disgusting people is one way to help combat the problem, and the only way I can do so is by using cheese pizza as the acronym. So I'm sorry in advance. I'm going to try to say it as scarcely as possible. Now, most websites that host cheese pizza are small. It's not very often we hear about one with more than a couple thousand articles of cheese pizza material, which is crazy to say. Obviously, any cheese pizza material is terrible, but a couple thousand is unfortunately the standard. But it doesn't typically get above that, because these kinds of websites garner ridiculous attention, which is disgusting to say the least, but law enforcement puts the boot on the neck of these sites with frequency. Just this year, there was something called Operation Grayskull, which executed in an effort to shut down 4 dark web websites that hosted cheese pizza. In total, 18 people were arrested, receiving 300 years of jail time altogether. The Assistant Attorney General, Matthew R. Galetti, had this to say: "Today's announcement sends a clear warning to those who exploit and abuse young people. You will not find a safe haven, even on the dark web. Thanks to the relentless determination of our prosecutors and law enforcement partners, we have exposed these perpetrators for who they are, eliminated their websites, and brought justice to countless victims." So it's very clear. Law enforcement wants these people arrested, and they put a lot of effort and energy into shutting down these websites quickly. But Welcome to Video was different. I mean, it makes Operation Grayskull look like a shoplifting case, because Welcome to Video wasn't just pushing a couple of videos. Like I said, this was designed to be a marketplace, and Welcome to Video was a very successful, very insidious marketplace. They hosted over 200,000 videos. Yeah, you heard me correctly. 250,000 videos on one website. And those numbers don't turn up overnight. No, this website was active for years, and they had an unbelievable 1.2 million registered users. I wish I were making this up. It makes me genuinely sick to say that out loud, but unfortunately, it's true. There were 1.2 million accounts on Welcome to Video. Just for reference, if a podcaster on Spotify had 1.2 million followers, they'd be in the top 15 most popular podcasts on Spotify. The city of Philadelphia has a population of 1.5 million. That's how disgustingly large that number is. In researching this video, I also discovered that this website had memberships, which is terrifying in and of itself, with most of these users having the free membership and 4,000 being paid members. Sick, absolutely sick. A lot of these videos were acquired from another site that was shut down called Avesno, but the growth that Welcome to Video saw was undeniably massive. As more users joined, they uploaded their own materials until an unfathomable 45% of its videos were unique, over 100,000. That's unheard of, and it also means that these weren't recycled videos. The crimes were happening live. active exploitation on the macro. When the US government became familiar with this website, needless to say, they wanted to catch the monsters responsible. And that's not to say other governments weren't angry as well. This website was a global issue, and its victims spanned continents. But the US didn't waste a second. Homeland Security and the IRS started working to identify them. Thankfully, the servers for Welcome to Video weren't very secure, and they were able to track the IP back to a rough location, South Korea. Now, this was a good start, but in order to pinpoint who exactly was running the website, they'd have to dig deeper. Now, Welcome to Video took payments through Bitcoin. Bitcoin, as we all know, is an anonymous currency, and most people think it's untraceable, but it isn't. Not really. You see, if you tried to track any cryptocurrency from the surface, it wouldn't go anywhere. You'd be chasing a ghost. But this is the IRS and Homeland Security we're talking about, and they had an idea: the blockchain. If they could follow the transactions through the blockchain, through the dark web, by surveilling suspects with less secure networks, they'd be able to pinpoint who was receiving all the money. And in March 2018, 3 years after Welcome to Video was published, which is 3 years too goddamn late, South Korean resident Son Jung-woo was arrested for creating the now infamous website, along with 337 other people. Those 337 people weren't just active users. During the investigation, they discovered that a lot of the videos were from active crimes of exploitation, and each of them was arrested. In this process, many children were saved. Happy ending, right? Nope. The guy is free today. How, you might ask? Well, when he was convicted of the crime, South Korean courts gave him an 18-month sentence for the production and distribution of cheese pizza. That's it. Now, the maximum sentence for cheese pizza in South Korea was 5 to 7 years, which is still unacceptably low, but he got a lighter sentence because he needed to support his family. I wish I was lying. The US attempted to extradite him so we could charge him here, but South Korea refused. When he was released after a year and some change, they charged him with fraud for gambling with the cheese pizza money, giving him another 24 months for a total of 42 months or 3.5 years in prison. Now, keep in mind, the maximum sentence at that time in South Korea was 5 to 7 years. That's it. Nothing more than a slap on the wrist. Now, if this makes you ridiculously angry, you aren't alone. The citizens of South Korea were absolutely infuriated by how short this monster's sentence was. And eventually, they took it to the Supreme Court of South Korea, who later raised the maximum sentence time from 5 to 7 years to 29 years, which, yeah, glad they changed it, but that doesn't detract from the fact that this man is walking free today. He can't leave his country or he'll be rearrested, but he's free. I have nothing else to say about this website except I'm glad it's gone. And I wish the other 1.2 million people involved would face some consequences, but today it looks like that isn't going to happen. But at least the laws got changed in South Korea, so maybe next time more people don't have to get hurt. And more people like Son Jung-woo can be properly punished. Carter. As you all know, the United States and Russia have been strong allies for 80 years, and nothing has ever impacted their relations negatively. If that joke wasn't obvious, here's the plain English. Our governments have been at odds since before they invented sliced bread, and when it comes to issues online, including the dark web, neither nation sees eye to eye. And the story we're about to cover takes this conflict to a whole other level. We're talking about Roman Selznev. Now, I wasn't familiar with this man either, or his website, Carter, before researching this video, so let's discuss this man's timeline, and I'll try to fill you in as best as possible. Roman Selznev was born in 1984, the fourth son of Valery Selznev, a member of Russia's Duma. Now, the Russian Duma is essentially the country's parliament, established in 1993. For our US listeners, It's like the House of Representatives. The Duma is responsible for debating and passing legislation that goes into law, so Valery was a big deal, and still is. Not much else is known about his early life, but being the son of a powerful figure, we can imagine he had a pretty alright childhood, and he really liked computers. Like, a lot. There are no official records of him until 2003, when at the young age of 19, he began his career as a multinational hacker. At one point in time, there was a dark web website called Carter Planet, a forum for selling and trading stolen information. Today we hear about this type of crime all the time. Servers are infiltrated, Facebook gets a data hack, and suddenly people are getting charged $10 for a drink they never bought in a country they've never visited. Now, Roman was an expert at stealing people's information. He would hack background check websites and retrieve their data, stuff like social security numbers and criminal histories, and he would then sell them on Card Planet. He was making so much money. In fact, he hired an employee, but there wasn't a lot of business in social security numbers. No, the real money was in the plastic. Credit card numbers. Roman worked with his employee to develop a software that would scan the internet for something called MSRDP open ports. Essentially, he was looking for weak security on administrative networks. Think of it like trying to break into a house. The front door has a state-of-the-art security system, but the back door has a cheap padlock. That cheap padlock was the MSRDP open port. He could connect to it remotely, break the lock, so to speak, and retrieve all the data without ever getting found out. And these networks had financial information, specifically credit card numbers. But there were a lot of networks to cover, lots and lots of houses, and most of them only had a couple of numbers. Roman needed a way to sift through the worthless ones and find the money. Large businesses with lots of recorded numbers. So he contacted another hacker, Bad B, and paid him to write an automated program that would look for credit card numbers across multiple networks. With this program, Roman and his employee scoured the internet, and after a couple of days, they received their first credit card dump, and he sold it to Bad B for thousands. They operated successfully for a year, stealing thousands of credit card numbers across multiple nations. Their target? Businesses, banks, financial institutions. Eventually, they developed malware that could crack even more sophisticated security, and they were raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars by the end of the year. But in 2004, the waters were getting choppy for Roman and Bad B. The operators of Carter Planet realized that law enforcement had caught their scent, and they shut down the website. Left without a way to make money, Roman looked for another home to sell his stolen goods. That's when he discovered Carter. Carter was the functional successor to Carter Planet, but now new and improved. It operated like the eBay of credit card theft, with hundreds of vendors and thousands of buyers selling millions of dollars worth of stolen credit cards. If you ever watched the news and wondered where all those stolen credit card numbers were going, this was where. A dark web criminal syndicate orchestrating multiple million-dollar heists across every nation on planet Earth, operating on Carter. And Roman was a big player. He posted ads across the website, specifically on the Card Dump forum. He had a lot of money by this point and was considered one of the most trusted thieves on the site. But he had a problem. Hacker Bad B, his longtime partner and friend, was getting jealous. Roman was making a ludicrous amount of money using a program Bad B had devised, and before long, their relationship began to sour. Friendship curdled into bitter hate, and an all-out war began. Anywhere Roman posted his ads, Bad B posted more. They wrestled over the sale of stolen credit cards and tried to screw the other at every opportunity, talking bad about the other and their credibility. It was a nasty, drawn-out battle between the two thieves, and before long, they were the only real players on Carter, the two master thieves fighting for the throne. Then, in 2010, Roman caught a lucky break. Bad B was arrested on a US warrant in France and was extradited on charges of fraud. The battle was won. The war was over. And Roman, left with no competition, was the crown prince of credit card fraud. And for 4 years, Roman reaped the rewards. He traveled the world, hired more employees, and was richer than ever. The smallest estimate for how much money he made is $17 million. He stole over 2.9 million credit card numbers for a total cumulative theft of over $169 million, plucked from the pockets of everyday civilians. That's right, he was single-handedly responsible for the theft of over $169 million, making him one of the most devastating thieves in modern history. Until 2014. You see, the United States were made aware of Carter about 2 years before Bad B was arrested. And this time, they weren't watching from the back lines. They had a front row seat. The Secret Service had infiltrated Carter and spent years following breadcrumbs to catch these criminals. They went undercover, buying credit card dumps, both from Bad B and from Roman. Eventually, they were able to track down Bad B. But Roman was more difficult. Roman was smart. He used multiple usernames to disguise his identity. Online, he wasn't Roman Selzanev, he was NCUX, Track 2, Bulba. One name was literally just Tupac. By hiding his title, it made it much more difficult to pin him down. In fact, initially, they believed Roman was actually multiple people. But Roman made some mistakes along the way. Firstly, across all of his aliases, the pricing never changed. This was odd. Most vendors had different pricing to compete with the competition. Roman and Bad B had different pricing. Think of it like McDonald's and Burger King. They were trying to outdo one another to sell the most of their product, but these aliases always had the same pricing. And over the years, the Secret Service tracked his writing style in communications with each of the 4 personas. All of this made it abundantly clear. These weren't 4 separate hackers. It was one man operating a multi-million-dollar business with very little help. So, how did they catch him? Well, after they'd buy a credit card dump, they'd collect all of the institutions that had the cards saved online. When they did this, over the tens of thousands of instances, they were able to narrow it down to a couple of institutions. From there, it was clear this wasn't a team effort, again, reinforcing the theory that this was one man. And remember when I was talking about MSRDP open ports? The cheap padlocks that Roman used to infiltrate these institutions? Well, Roman was remotely connecting to the networks from his personal computer. And in doing so, he left behind key information, the digital version of a physical footprint. He left behind his IP address. Even when he used VPNs, systems for obscuring his IP address, he would reuse the same systems, hosting companies and domains, all under the same aliases. And with this information, the Secret Service was able to get a name and a location: Roman Selzanev, the Maldives. In 2014, in coordination with the Maldives government, he was arrested by local Maldivian authorities and extradited to the United States. The dark web mecca of credit card fraud, Carter was finally shut down, and the crown prince of credit card fraud was finally in custody. But the story isn't over yet. So far, we've talked about the US interest in catching Roman, but what about his home country, Russia? Well, although the war between the two thieves was long since over, the war between the nations was just beginning. News broke all over the world. The United States made another arrest on a dark web kingpin, and another website shut down. The people were safe once again. But when Russia got word, they had a different story to tell. They called it an illegal kidnapping by the United States. According to them, Roman was their concern and their citizen, so the United States had no right to imprison him without Russian due process. They asked where Roman was being held or where he had even been arrested, and the US refused to give up the information. The Russian government was pissed. To them, this was an incredible disrespect. Eventually, through the American legal system, the Department of Justice eventually revealed that Roman had been arrested in the Maldives, and this continued to exacerbate the national conflict. You see, the Maldives doesn't have an extradition treaty with the US, and still doesn't to this day. The government of the United States negotiated with them specifically to arrest Roman and shut down his dark web enterprise. But the Russians considered this a departure from international legal norms. However, the US was prepared to defend itself. Back in 2009, when they discovered Carter, they believed Russian citizens might be involved. So they reached out to the FSB, which is essentially Russia's FBI, and requested assistance in capturing the criminal who would later steal hundreds of millions of dollars from basically every nation on the planet, Roman Selznev. But Russia denied the request. They refused to help. In light of this, the US stated, "We had no other option. You didn't want to arrest him, so we did." So for years, he was held in the United States awaiting trial until 2016, when Roman was found guilty of wire fraud, device fraud, credit card fraud, illegal access to protected computers, and the compromise of over 2 million credit cards. He was charged with 27 years in federal prison, but he didn't spend 27 years in prison. Don't forget, Roman's father was a Russian politician. This wasn't some random kid. This was the Russian equivalent of a senator's son, and they wanted him back. Over the years, the Russian government continued to make a stink about the arrest, calling it politically motivated and unjust. But Russia knew they had an ace in the hole. Russia had a couple of prisoners we wanted back. Among them, 2 journalists, a handful of activists, and a US Marine named Paul Whelan. Whelan was arrested in 2018 in Moscow and charged with espionage, a charge the United States vehemently denied. In fact, Paul was initially told upon his arrest in Russia that he was being detained for the express purpose of a prisoner exchange. In exchange for these prisoners, Russia wanted a couple of people, including Roman, a business fraudster, a couple of spies, and the famous Russian assassin Vadim Krasikov. In 2024, the exchange was agreed upon, and Roman was released to Russia. When he arrived by plane in Moscow, he was met by Vladimir Putin himself, and to our knowledge, he now walks free. And alright guys, that wraps up some unknown dark web websites. I really enjoyed this video. This was a little bit different than the previous dark web websites. Like the title even says, these were unknown. These were a little bit more obscure. These were more unique, so hopefully you enjoyed. If you did find this video interesting, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy others, so check out some other videos on the channel. I appreciate you guys watching. It means the world. Thank you so much for watching. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some shocking Reddit confession threads. You guys have been loving the Reddit confession threads, so I'm going to keep recording them as long as you guys keep watching them. So comment down below and let me know if you'd like to see another one in the future. And today, like the title says, we have some shocking, terrifying, depressing, and horrifying confessions. And yeah, this video will be long enough already, so I'll keep this intro short, but make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I just want to say thank you so much for stopping by and watching the channel. It means the world. And sit back, relax, and without further ado, let's get into some shocking Reddit confession threads. I left my wife because I thought she was cheating. She became a H addict. I found out she never cheated. Disclaimer. I have always been an emotional, stupid, dumbass wrecking ball of a person. I wish I could say this was out of the norm. I've been in therapy since I was 11 years old. I met my wife in 2005 in a nightclub in Lower Manhattan, and she was an amazing person, and we connected right away. We dated, then got married in 2007. I was 23, she was 25. But we were in love, and to us, it didn't really matter. We actually had a good marriage, and I loved her, and she loved me. I was shocked at how much we got along for so many years. Meanwhile, most people in relationships started to hate me almost like after 3 months. She still adored me after 7 years, but leave it up to me to screw that up completely. In 2014, I had suspicions she was cheating on me. Not strong suspicions, but she had a coworker who she was friends with who was, well, really attractive. I just thought, why be friends with this guy? She didn't often make friends with her coworkers. Why this guy specifically? Because he was hot? She was secretive about him, which made me way more suspicious. I remember one day she told me that she had a secret about him, which she would eventually tell me. I probably should have listened and understood what she said more. The hints she was dropping seem really obvious in retrospect. I didn't get any of her hints. For a bit, she got defensive over the phone. That was when I sort of began really suspecting things. One day, I checked her phone, and all I saw was him texting her saying he really needs to speak to her right now. Like a bunch of texts. Also texts about inappropriate intimate stuff. But it was really the "I need to see you now" texts which really threw me off. I didn't even confront her. That's the worst part. I just left and went to New Mexico to go stay with my parents. I was so sure she cheated on me. Nothing could convince me otherwise. I was so hurt that I became S-word for a tiny bit. Then I went to therapy and got better. But I blocked her in every possible way I could. She had no idea why I left. My therapist kept telling me to contact her. I never listened. I actually lied to my therapist and said I did. There were some times where she called my parents and I talked to her and just said that I knew she was cheating and that I couldn't be with her, and that was that, and then I just hung up. It was too horrible and emotional, and I just wanted to put it all behind me somehow. I wanted to act as if it never happened. I didn't have the balls to deal with it. I didn't file divorce papers at that time. I never explained anything further than that. I just hung up. In 2015, I painfully reconnected with her. I never told her why I left. I felt horrible, but I also felt angry at her for cheating on me. I never wanted to know who she cheated on me with or what the situation was. I just wanted her out of my life. But when I finally connected with her, I just found an entirely new person. She was in and out of rehab. She was a pill addict. She said it started after I left her, that she had a lot of pills left over from a surgery she had. She had a knee surgery in 2013 and started taking them a lot to deal with the pain of me leaving her. Then she connected with her friend who started selling pills to her. Anyways, after a bit more of talking with her online over quite a few weeks, I eventually told her the situation as to why I thought she cheated. It was sort of this unspoken thing beforehand. I told her I didn't want her to bring it up. Then I just asked her straight up. And she told me that was her coworker, and he was gay. She hung out with him a lot, and he would often call her and text her to come over so they could talk about his problems. I checked his Facebook, and he came out officially as gay in 2014. Before that, he was in the closet. Also, the inappropriate, intimate stuff they were talking about suddenly made so much sense. They were comparing the way women and men have intimate times to the way men have intimate with men. But it didn't seem obvious by the text I read. It just kind of sounded like they were planning to do intimate time with each other. In retrospect, it seemed painfully obvious, but at the time it wasn't. I just wish I didn't fucking freak out and leave. I think if I ever mentioned his name, it would have clicked for her. And she would have told me why it was just a misunderstanding. But she had zero idea why I suspected her of cheating. I left my wife, never spoke to her again, and went halfway across the country over a misspoken series of texts that I read because I was a sneaky fucking bastard and I was too emotional to even ask my wife what the problem was. I just left. I never asked her to clarify anything. She would go on to become a H addict from a pill addict. She posts sometimes about how she is 3 weeks sober, but it's never longer than that. I'm basically an alcoholic and live near my parents in Albuquerque. I have zero interest in finding a girlfriend. Instead, I have a bunch of meaningless one-night stands when I go out on weekends. I am almost always hammered and booger sugared up or Adderalled up when I go out on the weekends. I sort of have friends, but not really. They're just a bunch of alcoholics and party people in the area who I link up with on weekends. I can't be away from my parents now. They're the only people I enjoy being around. I'm just an emotionally fragile mess who feels like they completely ruined someone's life over something so stupid. I know it sounds stupid, but for the past few years, my parents are the only friends I have, and the only people I really see besides the people at my job and the woman I sleep with, who I never make connections with. I cannot help but think I will literally never get out of this. The fact that I ruined her life over this. I go to therapy, but it doesn't help enough. I still sometimes talk to her. We officially got divorced. Nothing split in 2017. She is a H addict, and I am horribly depressed, so we have some relations, but I can't help but think that I ruined her life far, far more than I ruined mine. And the worst part is, the only reason I am in pain is because I ruined her life. And just, man, that's such a insane confession. Yeah, that's just a good reason to not jump to conclusions. Even one of the top comments says, "Damn, dude, I'll remember this next time I want to jump to conclusions." But wow, I mean, he just read something on his girlfriend's phone or his wife's phone. Seemed intimate, seemed, like she was cheating, and he just flipped out, moved across the country, and ruined her life. Wow, I hope the OP is doing better now. I really do. I mean, it's been 7 years since this post. 7 years is a long, long time, and who knows what the OP is doing now. I just hope the OP is doing better now. I hope the OP's wife or ex-wife is doing better now, because, yeah, by the end of this post, it didn't seem like either of them were in a good spot at all. But 7 years is a long time to hopefully heal, and hopefully they are doing better now. There hasn't been a single update from the OP. This is the only post on the OP's entire Reddit account, so I just have to hope that they're doing better, but there's no way to know. And now let's read some top comments. Someone says, "You effed up. You still love her. She loved you. She might still. Reach out to her and explain what happened and ask for forgiveness. It might work. It might not. Either way, it sounds like you need each other." And I mean, a lot of the comments are just kind of flaming the OP for reasons that are obvious. But yeah, geez, that is just such a sad post, such a depressing post. And as the title of this video is so shocking, that's how he ruined his life and her life, by just jumping to conclusions, doing something irrational. And I hope we can all learn a lesson from this and, say that let's not jump to conclusions and instead talk to one another and figure stuff out, because jumping to conclusions really doesn't help anybody. And so, yeah, like I said earlier, I just hope the OP and the OP's ex-wife is doing better now. I am dying and have told nobody. This might be somewhat long, but I basically just made this Reddit account to talk about it. Some introductions first. I'm 22 male, and for the greater part of a year, I have noticed myself growing gradually weaker. I am an avid golfer who used to be able to hit drives upwards of 290 to 300 yards. Now I'm lucky to hit it 220 to 230 yards. In addition, I'm also someone who used to enjoy jogging until multiple repetitive falls more or less forced me to quit. There are other symptoms that raise concern, but I won't bore anyone with the extensive details. At any rate, about 6 months I had my initial consultation with my neurologist, and he was very dismissive of my symptoms, saying they were likely caused by anxiety and to not read further into it. After some protest on my part, he agreed to perform some diagnostic testing in a few months if nothing had improved. 4 months go by, and of course, things got worse. Perplexed, my neurologist ordered an EMG, which, if you did not know, is a test which involves measuring the activity of nerves in the body through the use of needle electrodes. Sounds awful, truly was not that bad. As the test began, the technician was very amicable and talkative, but as soon as the first needle went into my arm, her demeanor changed immediately, as if any levity had suddenly been drained from her. That was the first time I began to truly worry. Upon completing the test, she immediately sent the results to my neurologist, who, that very same day, arranged for additional testing including, but not limited to, MRI, extensive neurological exam, strength tests, and an additional EMG. The whole shebang, to be completed within the week. At any rate, following the completion of the second EMG, this time by my neurologist himself, I was summoned into his office. After jotting down some quick notes and doing some mental aerobics, he asked very politely for me to sit down. And before the words even left his mouth, I immediately knew what was going to come out. And that's essentially the story of how I went from being a perfectly normal 22-year-old to being told that I had Lou Gehrig's disease and 3 to 5 years of life left. And I just quickly looked up Lou Gehrig's disease, and apparently it's a progressive neurological disorder that attacks every nerve cell in the brain and spinal cord, causing loss of voluntary muscle control, weakness, and eventually paralysis, with death often resulting from respiratory failure, though mental function remains intact. So that is beyond terrifying. And then the OP continues saying, all things considered, I consider myself extremely fortunate that I still have most of faculties about me, for the time being. But on to the reason I made this post. Since my diagnosis, which was about 2 months ago, I have yet to tell anyone in person about it. My family and I have never been particularly close, and most of my friends are college buddies who now live close to 500 miles away. Of course, everyone is bound to find out eventually, but I would honestly be okay if they never did. The mere thought of burdening everyone as I slowly turn into furniture is almost more debilitating than the knowledge that my body is growing slightly more useless every day. I know it is the right choice to garner a support system, but it's almost as if I don't really want one. I just want to disappear, forgotten by all those who would otherwise pity my circumstances. I'm fully aware that I have no choice in the matter. This is just my way of exercising some minor control over my life before I lose control over everything else. And I mean, God, that is just so depressing and so terrifying, because with ALS, it's just a slow deterioration of your body. And it's not like, I mean, all horrible terminal diseases are like that, but like, it's just terrifying how you just slowly lose muscle function, but you remain intact in your brain, and then you just can't use your body anymore, and then you just eventually die. I mean, that is terrifying and so depressing. And now let's get into some top comments. Someone says, maybe this won't make you feel better, OP, but at the very least, knowing that you have 3 to 5 years allows you to prioritize the things you want to do in the time you have left. Young people die suddenly every day and never get the chance to think about what they would have or should have done. We're all going to die eventually. And personally, I hope I'm one of the people who gets plenty of advance warning, but of course, I'm sure it's different when you're actually in that position. Anyway, don't worry about paying back your student loans, your credit card debt, or watching what you eat. Go do whatever the heck you want to do. Enjoy your freedom. And then someone replies saying, 3 of those last years could be him lying in a hospital bed 24/7, unable to talk, eat, swallow, or breathe properly. The pulmonary system is the last to give in, and ALS patients often spend a long time absolutely paralyzed before actual biological death occurs. I'm really sorry to be a spoil sport here, but it could be only even a few months before he's bedbound. One of my patients had less than a year from the initial diagnosis, weak right arm, unsteady balance, until the last stage where he/she was in a ventilator, only able to blink. It took him/her actually several years in that state to die. Jesus, man. Someone else says, unless you have a highly toxic relationship with your mother, tell her. I'm fighting back tears just thinking that it could be my son hiding something so serious from me. Mothers usually only want what is best for their children, for them to be happy and healthy. Give her the chance to be there for you. You will need help down the line. You will need someone to speak and advocate for you. Someone who only has your best interests at heart. Often that is a mother or a spouse. And yeah, that is just so sad. And the final comment I'll read is, holy shit, dude, I'm so sorry. I don't advocate S-word, but I think in that circumstance, I would live my life as well as I possibly could for as long as I could, and then get it medically assisted if at all possible. Cheers, mate. Live and love as hard as you can. I can't do much, but I'll raise a glass for you. And then the OP actually responds to this saying, as it were, one of the first things I considered post-diagnosis was S-word. Even though it is undeniably a self-centered thing to do, I can't envision myself peacefully living out my final days locked inside my own bodily prison. That, in my opinion, is nothing short of sheer torture. And yeah, that is so haunting. And this was posted 9 years ago. And it's been 9 years since the OP made a comment, so we can only assume the worst, that the OP has since passed away. Hopefully the OP lived out their final days doing what they loved. And wow, that just really hits. I mean, hits hard. I mean, it's so shocking and so sad and so depressing to be diagnosed with something, especially so young, 22. And he only found out he had a few years left to live, and the final years might not even be really living. They will be, like he said, trapped inside his bodily prison. Wow. Yeah, super sad. And I mean, the OP's name is Enter Oblivion, which we can only assume relates to death, entering the oblivion of whatever, death. I mean, yeah, that is just really sad. And rest in peace, the OP. I hope he's in a better place now. Back in the 1980s, I used to run drugs, guns, and women between 2 major cities. I did some terrible things. Ask me anything. On this, the day before Thanksgiving, I keep thinking about how blessed I am with the life I now have. A loving family, a successful career, a beautiful wife who I love more than anything. At the same time, I cringe during this time of the year when I think back to the life I used to lead. All the names and locations in this confession have been fabricated, but with a nod to old memories not being 100% reliable, what I shall confess here is true. Also, before I begin, let me state that I'm not proud of this period of my life. I'm absolutely ashamed about it. Out of high school, I went to work at a manufacturing plant that my father and his before him had both worked at their entire lives. I made pretty decent money and owned my first house when I was only 19, while most of my friends were working shitty jobs and living in small, shitty dorms at various universities. I thought of them as suckers at the time. But despite my decent pay, it was never enough. Enter James, a guy I only barely knew in high school. Like me, he had a fake ID and frequented a very sleazy bar/strip joint just outside of our hometown. I didn't have many friends at that point because most of them were away at university, improving their lives. I guess that's why I gravitated towards James. Eventually, we started hanging out regularly. For a time, I even let him live at my house. One day, James asked me if I'd like to make $400 cash. Who wouldn't? And all I had to do was drive a car of his from the city nearby to a city about 4 hours away. That was it. He'd even give me an extra $50 to buy a bus ticket home after, so I did it without many questions. That's how it began. Every few weeks, he'd ask me if I'd be willing to do anything. And though I knew something shady must be going on, I figured what the hell. All I had to do was drive, drop the car off at a certain address, and then catch a bus back home. Easy money, no questions asked. One day, during one of the drives, the car, which was a junker, they always were, got a flat. When I opened the trunk to get out the spare, I saw a large black duffel bag, the kind hikers used to pack up large tents, but I knew there was no tent inside. When I opened it, I was only mildly surprised to see it filled with guns. I never mentioned the flat or my discovery of the guns to James. The money was too good, and I didn't want to piss him off. But over time, we just eventually, and naturally, cut out all the bullshit. Stopped using code words. Stopped pretending I didn't know what I was doing. About a year later, I knew full well that I was transporting either guns or drugs, and usually both, every other weekend. I asked for and received a raise, $600 a trip plus expenses. I never met the people on the other end during this time. I would just drop off the car at either a house or apartment complex in the other city, then get the fuck out of there. Meanwhile, back at home, James had become my best friend. He knew how to party. He knew everyone at the local bars and strip joints. He must have gotten me laid a dozen times, and I'm talking with girls who were hot as fuck. I had serious girlfriends during this time too, but whenever I had some kind of beef with James, he'd show up at the door with some young hottie that barely spoke English. Some, I suspect, were no older than 16, but they were always very submissive and compliant, and they always showed me a good time. I knew in the back of my head that these girls were being mistreated, that they were most likely escorts, that they were basically slaves. But I ignored all my reservations. I liked having intimate time with them, and I treated them like shit because it made me feel good somehow. Eventually, James asked me to drive 3 girls to the other city and drop them off at a bar. They were transferring, he told me. I agreed. During that drive, one of them tried to escape during a stop at a rest area. She literally threw open the door and took off running as soon as I stopped the car. I chased her down, tackled her, and dragged her back to the car while she wailed in tears and blubbering things in Polish or Russian. After that, I still didn't stop. I ran the girls too, but always bound their ankles together with twine before leaving. I ran them both ways, from my city to the other and back. I still ran the drugs and guns too, and I made a lot of money in the process. Everything began to finally change for me when James had me help him start recruiting locals. I know it's horrible, but the foreign girls were easy to ignore since I never really understood them. Only 1 in 3 ever knew much English, and even then, they were usually quiet. The local girls, they weighed on my conscience. I suddenly saw them as human. One in particular begged me to bring her home, and she was as young as my little sister, so I did. I brought her home. The scariest moment of my life was when James showed up at my house after that. He was furious, and he was caring as always. He actually drew his piece on me. I don't know how, but somehow I talked him down from murdering me right then and there. I did a few more runs for him after that, but no women/girls. Eventually, I got lucky. The plant I worked at had ordered increased production, 7-day work weeks. James knew he couldn't pay me enough to make up for me quitting that job, so he accepted the fact I no longer could be one of his runners. After a few months, he stopped even asking me. I got my shit together. During that time, I became very religious as the guilt for what I had done consumed me. I remain religious to this day, though not so much as back then. Eventually, I ended up becoming one of the suckers I used to sneer at. I went back to school, I got a degree, and I've been working in my field of study ever since. No idea why I got so lucky. Had I been pulled over once in any of those drives, I would have been fucked. Those days will forever haunt my nightmares. When I think of those poor girls especially, my own daughters are older than some of the ones I essentially R-worded back then. To this day too. Whenever I read about a shooting in that city I brought so many guns to, I wonder if possibly one of the weapons had been delivered there by me. The drug ODs too, the lives ruined by the drugs. Jesus, help me. But you can ask me anything if you want in the meantime. And before we move on to the comments, I just want to say quickly, this is such a different confession than usual. I mean, this isn't Ask Me Anything, a drug runner, a weapon runner. This is so much different than usual. And right off the bat, I just have to say, it's great that the OP got out of it when he could and didn't stay in that life for much longer. I mean, it's horrible for what he did, but I'm glad he feels some sort of remorse for it and he feels sorry for what he did and is hopefully doing better now or trying to give back to his community or do something because, yeah, that life usually doesn't leave a lot of people. But anyways, let's get into some comments. Someone asks, saying, I know this is hypothetical, but if the plant hadn't increased production, or if he matched the money, would you have stayed in? Was it just this that made you stop? Or were you leaning towards getting out already? And then the OP responds saying, if the plant hadn't increased the production, I would probably have tried to find a way to get out anyway. I was almost entirely clean of drugs at this point, and the guilt of what I had been doing, combined with my realization that I was risking my life and freedom, had me thinking of ways to get out. But James was a scary man when he wanted to be. I had seen it. I knew I couldn't just go to him and say I wanted out. The increased production gave me the perfect excuse. While he was pissed about it, James just told me I had to do what I had to do. If he had promised to match the money, I'd still have tried to get out, but it would have been more tempting to stay in probably because that work was a lot easier and I was still struggling with my sobriety. Someone else says, do you know what happened to James? Where is he now? And then the OP responds saying, James ended up moving for reasons I don't know. The last communication I ever received from him was a letter asking me if I'd be interested in joining him in a new business venture. I never replied to that letter. Years later, I found out he died from an OD. According to the Social Security Death Index, he died half a country away shortly after he sent me that letter. And then the commenter replies saying, sad stuff, man. Glad you got out of it and turned your life around. And then the OP responds saying, thanks. The really hard thing is looking into my past and seeing such evil. I can blame the drugs and my youth and the appeal of money, but at the end of the day, I know I was just an evil son of a bitch. Those girls. I think about those girls all the time. I often wonder what they're doing now, if they ever escaped. But I can't find out because I never knew their names. I wish we had never adopted this kid. My wife and I had been trying for a couple of years to have our own kids, but we found out we could not. So we went the way we had talked about many times before and went through adoption because, hey, every kid needs a home, right? That's when we came across our now adopted son, Nate. Names changed, of course. Nate was the son of a horrible mom who fucked who she could for drugs, money, etc. His biological father had some sense and convinced mom to put all three of her kids. Nate was the only one of his. The other two, a brother and sister, were from unknown/different fathers. She agreed. And that was when Nate was about 6. He was technically removed due to deplorable living conditions and abuse, but she didn't fight to keep him. We met him for the first time last year. I was sketchy on him. He appeared to have ADHD. Not a deal breaker, but wouldn't have been my first choice. He never looked at us, jumped up and ran around the restaurant we met at, and had a hard time focusing. Hell, he's a 9-year-old kid. Kids have a hard time sitting still and get nervous, I figured. My wife fell in love with him. I was still sketchy about it, but we had met other kids, so he wasn't our first choice at the time. We started getting more info on him, planned on meeting him more, etc. It was a learning curve. We took him to Chuck E. Cheese, just to hang with him for all day. He was all over the place. Kids, no biggie. We started finding out more from the foster parents, who we didn't care for. They seemed to be brainwashing their kids and seemed to be in it for the money. Nothing major, but I was still being cautious. We figured maybe he had either ADHD or some high-functioning autism. Again, not a deal breaker, but it was something I'm not used to. My wife had experience, volunteer, and career with special needs children. He seemed to be growing on us. Called us mom and dad once. We started having fun together. It seemed to be a good fit. We noticed, closer to the day we took him home for 6 months before finalizing the adoption, he had addictions. Mostly video games. Not too unusual. Again, he's a kid. Kids are supposed to love video games. Fuck, we both like them. Why not? But he became aggressive. Like, wouldn't listen to you, and if you turned them off or threatened to take them away, he'd become violent and throw the controller, kick in a chair, etc. We nipped that in the ass as soon as possible, limiting him and explaining why. We eventually took it away altogether. Maybe explain later. He saw a therapist, psychologist, optometrist, general physician, and several other professionals. One diagnosed him with ADHD, another thought autism, another thought reactive attachment disorder. All seemed less than great, but we're attached. We'd get through this. That was about a year ago now. Ever since then, at least every other day, if not every day, we have to put him in restraints. All okay per DHS, his therapist, and others. We've had to get onto him. We've tried different reward systems. We've tried starting nice/second chances. We've tried everything we can think of. Fuck, even trying to show unconditional love when we feel nearly defeated. He's constantly lying about everything and anything. He plays dumb. He threatens to be bad, which we aren't afraid of. We've shown him many times we're not afraid of him. He breaks things. He has no emotions, anything. Never shows remorse unless he's told to. Tell them you're sorry. Does what he wants, even when he knows it's going to get things taken away. He's tried and somewhat succeeded to hurt his dog several times because he wants to see how it feels pain. He's been pure hell. He understands, but he doesn't care, from what we can tell. Just tonight, we had a date night and dropped him off to a parents' night out group at the local Y. We had a great time just being able to be ourselves. We get back, I go in to pick him up. The assistants there pull me aside and tell me he has caught trying to, well, not so much trying, he did grab several girls' parts twice. That was all the info I needed. I grabbed him, a bit embarrassed, brought him to the car, and had him explain to my wife what happened. Of course, we've been talking to him for several hours now, explaining why that was bad, etc. But again, he shows no remorse and just makes up excuse after excuse. Long story short, he wanted to, and so he did. After everything we've been through, I honestly regret adopting him. I don't know if I'd adopt again if I was given the chance. Even if given the chance to go back in time and change my mind on him and switch to another kid, I don't think I would. We'd be much happier without him, or any other child in our home. I wish Nate had never come into our lives, and I'm pretty sure my wife wishes the exact same thing. And now let's get into some comments, and boy, these comments are honest and harsh. Let's get into it. Give him back to the state. It's not worth it to keep him. He has had a shitty life, but he is clearly beyond your means and abilities. It's sad, but it has to be done for your sanity and quality of life. And then someone replies saying, seconded. Things don't work out. I feel like OP and Mrs. OP were rushed into this decision. This kid was born addicted to whatever the fuck his biological mom was on, and now you have the deranged juvenile running your house. Has OP talked to wife about giving him back? And then someone replies saying thirded. Might even be good for the child. If it's clearly not working out here, perhaps he can have a chance with someone else. And then someone else says, When you said reactive attachment disorder, I knew you were effed. That is one thing that is just going to totally psychologically destroy a person for life. You see, plenty of adults that have ADHD and high functioning autism make it and do fine in life, but I have never heard of a story of someone with reactive attachment disorder being anything other than a complete psychological disaster. The main stories I have heard are of severely neglected children from Russian orphanages who are complete demon children. I hate to say this, but he will probably get violent towards you at some point. And that is kind of the general consensus. Everybody is saying he's kind of a lost cause, especially for the OP and Mrs. OP here, because I think it's just they're in over their heads. They can't, not fix, but they can't help someone like this. They just aren't a specialist at all. And this kid was just given to him at this state, and it's kind of hard to fix that for just adopted parents. And the OP has made no new updates on the profile or on the OP's profile, so we don't know what happened. But everybody in the comments was being very, very honest and very, very grim. They're saying that they can't really help him, and he seems to be a lost cause almost, and to just give him back to the state. And I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this one. If you guys have any thoughts, please drop them down below. I'm curious to hear if you guys think these Reddit comments are being too harsh or if they're being honest and there really is no fixing Nate. But hopefully Nate's doing better now. Hopefully the OP and the OP's wife is doing better now. And I'm just really curious what happened with the situation, but we have received no updates. I'm waiting for my brother to either commit S-word or get his life together. Today, my younger brother turned 21. No party, no celebration. He refused to read his birthday card from our grandma. He did not even want to blow out the candles on his cake. Ever since I was about 12, I knew my parents were failing him. He was a hyperactive kid, so they pumped him full of ADHD medication, which gave him insomnia and anxiety. So they put him on anxiety meds and sleeping pills, which made him depressed. So they put him on antidepressants, all before age 10. He was given a computer at a young age and was completely addicted immediately. My parents set no boundaries in terms of usage, so he would play all day, every day, sometimes late into the night before school. As you can imagine, this resulted in him becoming antisocial, ruined his grades, and prevented him from participating in any meaningful activities like sports or clubs. I would get into screaming matches with my mother over the fact that she needed to take the computer away from him. Then our other family members started expressing concern. Then teachers. Our parents did nothing. Later, he was diagnosed with celiac disease, which explained his difficulty concentrating and other problems he had been experiencing. My parents provided him with gluten-free food for about 6 months before giving up. It was all too hard. Pathetic, I know. So he has now been eating gluten as a known celiac for the past 6 years. I've had a million discussions with him and my family about how much damage this causes, and they pretend to care but are too lazy to do anything about it. I tried providing education. I tried giving meal ideas and grocery lists. I tried cooking gluten-free meals for the family. They do not change. As I became an adult, I would speak to other family members and family friends who agreed that what my parents were doing was wrong. They would agree that he needed the computer taken away, that he needed to be disciplined, and that he needed to stop eating gluten. At that point, so much damage had been done, and he ended up dropping out of high school 8 months from graduation. His reason? Our mother couldn't drive him, and he didn't like walking to school. My brother is not an idiot. My parents are both well-educated and intelligent people. Why they have made these choices, I can only assume, is to avoid temporary discomfort. He has been to so many psychologists and nothing has helped. One psych refused to continue seeing him because he was refusing to accept help. Over the years, he had expressed how depressed he is, but seems to have no desire to be helped. He has threatened S-word a dozen times, but never acted on it. When he does this, I urge my parents to take him to the hospital, to call an ambulance. But then he is suddenly all better. He uses S-word as a threat to get what he wants for them, and they don't see it. I know the way I'm thinking might sound extremely harsh, but truly, I feel at this point he either does a complete 360 or simply commits S-word. Sadly, the latter is more likely to happen. I have exhausted all my options. He is unemployed and will not apply for jobs. He does not want to try any new hobbies. He refuses to volunteer anywhere. He knows that I'm here for him whenever he needs, but he does not want help. At the end of the day, there's nothing left I can do unless he chooses to help himself. We have both dealt the same cards in life. I have not been exempt from problems in my life. I have had low points. Arguably, I have faced far greater challenges than him, but I have made the best of what I have. I have helped myself. He has decided this life for himself. In the past year, I have had to stop trying and simply let go as other priorities in my life take over. I'm currently working full-time and saving for a house deposit with my partner. We plan on getting married and having children as soon as financially possible. Once I have children, they will be my top priority. I fear that when our parents eventually pass away, I will be the only person left in his life. At that point, I will not be able to help him. I just had to confess the way I feel. I know it is horrible, but it is the most realistic conclusion to this problem. Tell me I'm an asshole. Tell me there's something I can do. And then the OP makes an edit saying, I do not live with my family anymore. For the people saying I don't understand ADHD, I also have it but was diagnosed later in life, as is typical for most girls. It wasn't picked up when I was young. I have also suffered with severe depression and S-word thoughts, but have chosen to reach out for help and work on developing healthy coping mechanisms. I don't want to provide too many details about myself because I wanted my brother to be the focus on the post, but thought this would provide some more context. And now let's get into some Redditors' thoughts and get into the comments on this post. Someone says, your parents completely failed him, but this isn't on you to fix. You've been trying to help for years, but you can't make someone change that doesn't want to change. And I do agree with that. I mean, you can help someone or try to help someone as much as possible, but some people just don't accept help. And it's horrible because you might want the best for them, but they just can't accept it for whatever reason. Another commenter says, at this point, you're just going to have a million people here telling you you're in the wrong because of his age or his ADHD or their own projections based on non-related things they felt as kids. But ultimately, just do the best you can. If he doesn't want help, don't stress yourself out too much trying to give him it though. Some people are just set on failing in this world. It's like that old phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Good luck. And then a commenter replies to this saying, agree. My little brother was almost exactly the same as this kid. The real problem was the more people pressured him, the harder he dug his heels in. I started coming over and bringing him some new clothes from Walmart. I'd asked if he wanted to hang out, and if he said no, then okay, see you later. He didn't leave the house for years. I genuinely thought he might murder S-word my mom for a while it was so bad. One day he said yes. We got Mexican food and I told him about my job. He said, sounds boring. And I'm like, yeah, bro, but it makes me afford cool shit and I kind of like it. This was a major turning point for him. Now he has a great job. His coworkers adore him. He seems genuinely happy and he has more friends than I do. No one ever believes it's been such a wild 180. I do think he's a little autistic, but the only evidence I have is the lack of identifying sarcasm and his way to logical attitude for literally everything. And yeah, I think that one poster said it perfectly. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I just have to feel bad for the OP because the OP genuinely seems to want to help their brother. But, you know, it's either a mix of the parents not trying to help ever since a young age, and now it's kind of a lost cause. But as the reply to that comment said, he says, my brother was the exact same. And he did a 180 and he's all good now. So hopefully the OP doesn't give up on her brother just yet, and he can make a 180 and improve his life. But, we haven't heard any updates since then. This was posted about a year ago. So hopefully the OP is doing better now, and the OP's brother is doing now. I've lost $200,000 in the past 3 years gambling. I, 25 male, have a serious gambling problem, and I'm not sure who to go to anymore. It all started in the middle of COVID with $25 here and there, betting on sports and playing blackjack for fun. Never really was a big issue, never betting more than I could handle. I have a great job. I have a great job that pays me $100,000 a year. I still live at home and pay the little necessities like rent and bills. In 2022, it got bad. I lost about $80,000 without anybody knowing my entire life savings was gone. I called 1-800-GAMBLER, got myself banned from my respective state from all casinos and online, and even told my mother about it. I was doing good for about 3 months, and then 2023 hit, and I found this app where I could bet cryptocurrency. So I started there, entering in $500 here and there. I want help. I know I need help, and I get into these moods where I just can't stop even though I know it's bad. I can't help myself. I've been through all the swings. The gamblers have the winnings and the losings. I'm unaware of what to do and where to go. I lost it all last night. I've been up all night thinking about it. I feel lost and very tired. And I just thought this was a very important confession to add because gambling is horrible, and it is even worse in the modern day. I mean, I'm sure you see a lot of YouTubers promoting it and taking a sponsor from gambling companies, and every single ad on YouTube is basically a gambling company nowadays, it feels like. But gambling truly is such a slippery slope, and you just don't win no matter what. Because if you gamble for the first time and you win, great. You're going to want to gamble again, and then you'll eventually lose. And then if you lose, you're going to want to win that back, and then you can keep losing. And it's just that's just obvious gambling, but it's just not a risk you want to take. Even the first time can get you hooked, and it's just a very slippery slope of losing all your money. And it's hard enough to keep money nowadays, let alone just throwing it into the void of the gambling universe or whatever, the gambling gods taking it from you. But yeah, just very rough story, and I can only feel for the OP losing his life savings. I mean, I can't even imagine trying to rebound from that and to have the motivation to continue working or continue doing anything in life knowing you lost like tens and tens of thousands of dollars. God, it's just so sad. And let's get into some comments. Someone says, normally posts like this make me want to mind my own business. First things first, the money gambled is gone. You know this place. You know it's your bones. The door with incredibly steep stairs is a choice you could take, my friend, and you should take it. Realize that not only do you have the privilege to have had the fun you've had for so long, but you also have the luxury of being able to bounce back. Having not affected anyone but yourself for the most part, learn and grow. Perfection is enemy of progress, and you've never going to have a streak that will resurrect the pain from you. Gambling is a demon that will rob you of the person you are meant to be. Many of us have been here, and you will bounce back and beat this. Turn the page, leave it behind, and take what you've learned and use it to be fucking amazing. Edit. Oh yeah, get some sleep. Lord, what a difference a day makes. And then the OP responds saying, thank you so much, kind stranger. I'm going to make this post my homepage on my phone. And it's been about a year since the OP posted this with no further updates, so I can only hope the OP has gotten better, rebounded, and bounced back the best he could. I was very successful as a child, but I lost it all and now I have nothing. When I was 14, I was a pretty big YouTuber. I had around 1.8 million subscribers. My channel was blowing up, and I was making a lot of money. Some months over $50,000. It was my dream and I was actually living it. I'd made tons of close friends from YouTube. I was well known in the game I played. And for the first time in my life, I was genuinely happy. But the thing is, I never really saw the money. My narcissistic mom was in control of it all. She told me I was too young to have a bank account and that she'd take care of it for me. She gave me around $1,000 a month, which, yeah, sounds like a lot for a 14-year-old, but when you're making 50 times that, turns out, instead of saving it for my future like she promised, she was spending most of it. When I turned 15, things started falling apart. My mental health completely deteriorated. I developed anorexia and ended up hospitalized. My channel became impossible to keep up with. I stopped posting for almost a year, and everything I built just started to disappear. Then, when I finally wanted to come back, I made a stupid decision that basically ruined any chance of reviving my channel. I tried downloading Adobe software for free. Yeah, dumb, I know. I got hacked and the hacker posted some graphic content on my channel. I got permanently banned. And instead of contacting YouTube right away, I just gave up. I was so mentally checked out that I didn't even care at the time and told myself I would deal with it later. When I finally tried to appeal months later, YouTube denied me. I tried everything I possibly could to get my channel back and nothing worked. My mom had spent most of my money, but she left me around $100,000. I had to literally beg her for over a year to give it to me. But like an idiot, I blew it. Car, addictions, very bad decisions. It turns out my mom was right all along. When I was 19, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and started drinking a lot. Now I'm in my 20s, completely broke, completely alone, and I feel like a fucking loser. I know I'm stupid. I know I made horrible choices, but please don't judge me too harshly. I wasn't in my right mind, and at the time, I didn't care about my future because I wished I was dead. I couldn't see past the moment I was in, and I just let everything fall apart. I think about my past a lot. How much potential I had. How I literally had it all at 14, and how I just let it slip away. I don't know how to move on from it. I peaked as a teenager, and now I have nothing. If anyone's ever recovered from throwing their life away, I'd really love to hear now. Because right now, I don't see a way forward. And now let's get into some comments. Someone says, if you could be that successful at 14, you can do it again in your 20s. Use your life story in an interesting, compelling, and positive way. I agree with that. Someone else says, hi OP, I had 7 million followers on my channel. Got hacked, too, I'm from Philippines, and I thought my life was over. But I didn't give up. I moved on, graduated college, and continued with my life. Yes, we had some good followers before, but life goes on. It doesn't stop just because we lost that channel. I have my own family now, and also started my channel from the 0 followers to almost 4 million followers right now. I also bought multiple properties because of that channel. Had 500 million plus views last year, 2024. I created my channel when I was 16, got hacked when I was 19. I'm now 26 years old. It was tough to deal with, for real, but promise it will be worth it. Just keep going. And yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of the comments say. Just keep going. You can turn it around. It can get better. And I have to agree. I mean, I have a channel that's pretty successful, but I haven't gone through anything of what the OP is mentioning with her mother stealing all the money. I mean, I can't imagine. That's so tragic. And I just hope the OP can learn and move on. It's very unfortunate the OP blew the $100,000 because that could have been a great starting point for starting another business or just investing it or just saving it or as a great, emergency fund or whatever. But it's unfortunate she blew it. And I just have to say, get up, keep going, keep moving on because, 20 is still very young and you have a lot of life to live. You don't need to give up now, and you didn't peak at 14. Your peak is still in the future. On to the next one. I hit rock bottom last night after years of gambling. I really need to get this off my chest and hear from others who've been through it. Hey everyone, I'm 22 years old and I've been gambling since I was 18. I've never really told anyone the full story, but after what happened last night, I feel like I finally hit my breaking point. It all started when I first went to the casino with my friends at 18. I put down $50 and somehow walked out with $1,000. The next day, I did the same thing, another $50 and $1,000 on roulette. At that age, that kind of win felt unreal. I got hooked. For a while, it didn't seem that bad. I'd go maybe once every week or two with my mates, only spending around $50 each time. I was working at a Korean barbecue place, so I always had a bit of spare cash to play with, but over the years, it started to spiral. When I was 19, I got into sports betting, and that's when things got really bad. I lost every single dollar I'd saved for a trip to Asia. The trip was only a few months away, and I had to pick up another job just to make sure I didn't disappoint my girlfriend. That guilt and stress nearly broke me. I told myself I'd learned my lesson, and for a while, I stopped. I went a few months clean and built my savings back up around $6,000, but, of course, the moment I felt safe again, I went back. I started winning again at first, and that false sense of control came flooding back in. Then, last night happened. I lost everything. Around $14,000. That was all the money I had saved. I work in support work now, and I'm at a point where I barely have enough left for fuel. I'm so depressed and full of regret. I keep replaying every moment, wishing I could go back and make different choices. What makes it even harder is pretending everything's okay. Having to smile in front of my girlfriend when all I feel is guilt and shame. Trying to hang out with friends and act like I'm fine when deep down, I feel completely empty. It's exhausting trying to keep up with the act when all I want to do is disappear for a while. I know I'm still young and that I can rebuild, but right now, it just feels unbearable. I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to keep living in this cycle of losing, rebuilding, and destroying myself again. If anyone out there has gone through something similar, how did you recover? How did you rebuild your finances and your mental health after hitting rock bottom? Any advice or even just hearing your stories would mean a lot right now. Thanks for reading. And now let's get into some comments. Someone says, one of the worst addictions, brother. My father, rest his soul, was a huge gambler for most of his life. Good man, bad habit. Very bad. He kicked it when he was around 60 but died at 65. The amount of shit that he went through and put my family through. Sheesh, you wouldn't believe it. Just stop gambling. And go to Gamblers Anonymous if you need to. It helped Pop. Someone else comments saying, since almost nobody here has given you actual advice, let me do it. You lost $14,000, which is a lot of money. It's so much money that you feel like you hit rock bottom and probably feel a lot of sadness, anger, guilt, and shame towards yourself in this whole situation. You can't undo the damage that you've done to your own mental health and financial situation, but here's what you can do. Learn from it. It's the least you can do, and here's how. Number one, start sharing. Start talking about what happened with people you trust with your life, parents, girlfriends, siblings, close friends. This will help you with your mental health and clarity, which you need to start rebuilding. And that's what I always say in these videos. Whenever you guys comment or email me with confessions or, you're struggling with something, I always tell you guys, please talk to somebody because it does make it better. And then the commenter says, number two, look for professional help. You're an addict and you need to protect yourself from yourself. This is not something an addict can do by themselves, so you need help and guidance. You don't have to do this by yourself, and realizing that will make you feel so much lighter. Number three, start financial rebuilding. Financial stress is horrible. Once you start saving money again, you'll feel proud and happy. It's a present and it means you're back on track. Go to meetings and keep talking to your loved ones, especially when you feel some kind of urge. Make yourself proud. Stop surviving and start living. And then the final comment I'll read, someone else says, nobody wins at gambling, bro. Nobody. And I just have to agree and emphasize that last tidbit. Nobody wins in gambling. You just can't win. You're just chasing a win that doesn't really exist. And if it does, it exists for 0.000000001% of people, and even they lose. So just not even worth starting. And if anyone watching, are dealing with gambling issues, please seek help. And also, I just have to advise against gambling. It's never been easier to gamble. Back in the day, you'd have to go to a casino or go to a different state to gamble. But now it's as easy as pulling out your phone and gambling on this or that or the other thing. And I think it's truly terrible and a horrible addiction that a lot of people are suffering with right now. So if you are watching and going through gambling addiction, please seek help. It's not worth it. You will only lose. It's just a slippery slope. And I wish you all the best if you are suffering with gambling addiction. I took some Benadryl and it has forever completely changed me. I should have known I'd end up here. What started as a way to sleep a little easier turned into something that's taken over my life. I started taking Benadryl a while ago just to help knock me out. But over time, it stopped being about sleep. I started taking more and more. I liked the way it made everything feel distant, like I could turn off my brain. I've talked about it before, as some of you have read. I told myself I was in control, that I could stop whenever I wanted, but that was a lie. I've been hospitalized now. My body couldn't keep up with what I was doing to it. I was hallucinating, disoriented, a shell of myself, hearing my dead mother, seeing the Hat Man, feeling trapped in my own skin. The doctors told me I was lucky to even make it in. Lucky. That word feels weird when you're strapped to a hospital bed, wondering what the hell you've done to yourself. Even now, even after everything, there's still this part of me that wants to go back to it. It scares the hell out of me. I feel like I've rewired my brain and now I can't find the way back to normal. I don't even remember what normal feels like. I have no one to talk to. Maybe just to get it off my chest. Maybe because I feel like I'm screaming into a void and hoping someone hears me. I don't want to be this person. I want out. I can't keep going like this. I have seen things I can't explain and things I don't know how to explain, like smells, creatures, and I felt like I've been floating in a world beyond my understanding. And now let's get into the comments. Someone says, it's a nightmare drug, and at least one user from this sub died this year. You need to stop now. It's a delirium. It's not fun. It's only addictive and highly dangerous, and the trips sound awful. Please seek help. And then someone comments saying, well, I'm glad Benadryl makes me feel itchy, so I stay away from it. And then some people share their stories. Someone else says, long-term Benadryl use has been linked to dementia in old age. So I'm glad you're getting some help with this. Please stay safe. Best of luck to you. And then a lot of the other comments share their own stories with Benadryl and how it's destroyed their life. And I have some unfortunate news, I think, because I went to the OP's profile and the OP made one final post about 7 months ago. And the post simply reads, I'm not going to make it. I'm sorry, everyone. And I just saw that final post and I don't know, it just shook me. Because I don't think the OP made it. And the OP only made the post of the I took some Benadryl and it has forever completely changed me, responded to some comments, and then made that final post about a month later from that post that we just read and saying, I'm not going to make it. I'm sorry, everyone, with one upvote. And I know I said it, but it just shook me because I don't think the OP did make it. I don't know why the OP would lie. Obviously, this didn't get attention. And I think that's what makes this feel so much more eerie and sad and depressing, because the OP saying, I'm not going to make it, I'm sorry everyone, got one upvote. Nobody saw it. Like, it feels like he's speaking directly to me or to everyone watching, you know? Yeah, very eerie and very sad. And I hope the OP said this for whatever reason. Hopefully the OP was just in a state of delirium and said it, and it wasn't truly his last post before he passed, but who knows? This is the last we've ever heard from the OP, and I can only wish the OP the best and hope he's still around. But yeah, this one really, really shook me. I'm having an affair on my wife. 10 months ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I decided to be a stay-at-home dad. Don't get me wrong, I love my daughter and I love being with her, but it has completely ruined my relationship with my wife. I can't fully explain my wife's shift in demeanor towards me, but it's like she has lost all respect for me as a man. We've only had intimate time one time since our daughter was born because she always says that she's not in the mood. We've been together for the better part of a decade, and she's never acted this way towards me. Even while she was pregnant, she didn't treat me this way. I've tried to talk to her about it, but she just says that she can't change how she feels. For these reasons, I've been feeling pretty emasculated. So as the title says, I've been having an affair. The woman I'm having an affair with is one of the moms in my Mommy and Me group. I've known her for, 6 to 7 months now. But we've only been doing this for about a month. I honestly don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and I don't know where I'm going to go from here. All I know is that she makes me feel respected and makes me feel good in a way that my wife doesn't anymore. I want the relationship between my wife and I to return to what it was previously. But even if I went back to work and she started treating me with respect again, I don't know if we could ever go back. And now let's get into some top comments. Someone says, people here are trying to get to the root cause of the issues you and your wife are having. No one is pointing out that you are having relations with another man's partner that has just started their own family. Dude, this is so wrong. So wrong. You're destroying yours and another family. Stop it. Also, stop blaming your wife for your decisions. She makes you feel emasculated. You don't cheat on her to start feeling like a man again. You talk or go to therapy. Then all else fails, you leave. From one man to another, don't do this. It is shitty. It makes us look bad. Act like a real man and stop whining and get out there and do something about it. Something that preferably doesn't destroy another family. And I can't help but agree with the commenter here because, yeah, he's not only destroying his own family, but also someone else's new family. I mean, that can really cause a lot of damage that is very avoidable. And then I went to the OP's profile and saw that he made an update on this situation. And the title is, Update, I'm having an affair with my wife. I made this post sometime in February. A couple of weeks after that I came clean to my wife about what I was doing. It was difficult, but we eventually worked it out. I immediately ended my relationship with the other woman. We went to counseling for a while. I went back to work and I suggested that our daughter go into care, but my wife insisted on taking care of her. The counselor was actually really helpful. I expected her to just tell me that I was the only one in the wrong, but she was actually fairly understanding of what both my wife and I needed. Anyway, since then, we've been doing much better. We have intimacy on a regular basis. We've been going on dates, and we found out last week that she's pregnant again, which we're both really happy about. We're obviously going to handle it very different this time. She's still staying at home with her daughter, and she will be staying at home with this child too. When I made the last post, things were looking pretty bad, and I really didn't think that we'd recover. But for the last 6 months, things have been back to how they were before. I was a stay-at-home dad. Better, even. And, that's a great update post because I feel like we get a lot of sad posts in these confession videos, and this one had a bright end and a good ending, so that's great, and a good testament to how if anyone watching is going through something like that, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and you can get through anything. I'm dying. I have to talk about it to someone. I can't keep the secret anymore. I have cancer. Brain cancer. Discovered way too late to do something about it. In a month, I'll probably be gone. I just said to my friends that I'm going to my family for a month. Too bad I'm not coming back. I don't want them to see me die. I had the dream of becoming an actor. Now it's a little too late for that. Don't take your life for granted. One day you might find out that it'll be way shorter than you imagine. I don't want to be treated like a victim. I just wanted to take everything I had weighing on my stomach and throw it all out. Edit. Wow, thank you all so much for the support. It means a lot to me. You guys are fantastic. Edit 2. I read all of your comments and it warms my heart like nothing else. Sorry if I don't answer, but you guys are so much that it would be impossible. Still, thanks again. Love you all. I want to say something to you. Throughout the day, ask yourself, if I die right now, would I be happy with what I did in my life? If the answer is yes, then keep doing what you're doing. If the answer is no, then something has to change. I hope this helps. Live life to the fullest. And unfortunately, this post was posted 9 years ago, so we can only assume that the OP has long since passed, but I hope the OP had a great final time living and had a great last few months or last month with his family and friends, hopefully. And I think that ending sentence was so impactful. Live life to the fullest, and if you aren't happy with what you're doing now, make a change, because you never know when, this life might end for you. And yeah, let's get into some comments. Someone says, fuck. I know I'm just a stranger on the internet and my words maybe won't mean much to you, but I think telling your friends about your situation is something you should do, because when they get the notice unexpectedly, they will feel bad for not doing something before. You should thank them for the time you have spent with them and everything they have done for you. I know it is cliche, but if you have something you regret not doing before, now is the time. I truly hope you spend your last days living, not dying. If you want to talk or anything, just PM me. And yeah, I agree. I don't think he should keep it from his friends, because then they might regret it, because, people just assume you're going to be around for longer and they're going to be like, no, I'm not going to see you, or I'm not going to hang out. You're still going to be around, and then you suddenly die and they will live their life in regret not going to see you. And yeah, just a super sad post. And all the comments are extremely supportive, but I just hope that the OP is, in a better place now and doing the best he can and wherever he is. But extremely sad post and very, very impactful. I got into drugs and then a hard downward spiral. Some effects suck. Long read, but I gotta get it off my chest. It started in high school when I loved smoking Zaza. I also discovered adult videos around then and would smoke and watch it. In college, Zaza started giving me bad anxiety, worrying about dumb things, so I stopped. I lived in a European country for 6 months for an internship and discovered the booger sugar. I was hooked. I went broke on booger sugar and booze. Almost cost me my internship. When I got back to the States, I found hookup, and it was shitty, so I eventually quit it. A few years later, I was the manager at a restaurant, and one of the other managers was a mule of sorts. He would hide bricks of fish scale colored booger sugar in the ceiling tile in the bathroom until someone came to pick it up. I got a discount on this stuff, and I was back to using. This time, it was daily, all day. I would get off work around 10, then go to the gym and do some booger sugar in the bathroom and work out for a couple hours. Well, one day the plug dried up, so I went to another worker who knew a guy. I did this stuff at home and it wrecked my nose. Painful. I went to the bar with the other manager who mentioned it had ice in it. He had used it too. I knew it was bad, but the way it made me feel was so different. Crystal clear vision, everything so bright. I felt so energetic and productive. Eventually, I stopped bothering with the cut stuff and got crystal straight up from one of the line cooks. And then he goes into explicit detail of what he did. I can't say it, but he really started to enjoy it. And then he says, I started getting reclusive, staying in my house by myself most days I was off, watching really weird, nasty adult videos. One day, I started seeing what looked like gas vapors, distortion coming from my outlet. I started staring at my outlets in my house for hours. I was getting super paranoid, thinking I had gas leaks in my outlets, constantly looking out my windows for I have no idea what. I started seeing shadows in the corners of my vision. Eventually, I ended up losing my job. After crying about being a failure, I went to the place where the girl I was quasi-dating works. She was often alone. I confessed to the drug spiral, and she completely disowned me. Said she was disgusted and to get out. I went to a bar and got destroyed. Alcohol poisoning levels. I stopped the hard stuff cold turkey the next day and started applying for a very different type of job. I ended up getting one, and now I'm decently successful at it. I have a loving wife and a child and a good home, but every now and then I get flashbacks of the sharp sting in my nostrils, and it makes me want to vomit. I still occasionally look at the outlets to see if they're leaking. I have no desire to touch the stuff, but I really want those memories to go away. And now, at this point in this video, this story is once again a great reminder that addiction is a slippery slope, and what might start as an innocent addiction to one thing or an innocent pastime can then spiral and ruin your life and ruin your health and everything. So, just another great reminder. And let's get into some comments. Someone says, the memories are important. If you didn't have them, you wouldn't know not to go there. It sounds like you are adventurous and like to figure out life for yourself. And even more so when you were young. Just take them as a chapter in your life. Been there, done that, don't need to go back. Also, at least now you'll be on top of it if there's an electrical fire. And then the OP responds saying, I tried to remind myself that the memories of how horrid it was is what's keeping me on track. I still like to drink, but I'll keep that as my vice as it's under control. The electrical fire comment got me laughing. And yeah, everyone just collectively says, I'm glad he made it to the other side. I'm glad the addiction didn't get you, because for a lot of people, you know, once you get to that hard stuff, it is very, very hard to get out and turn your life around. But it sounds like he's doing great now. I hope the OP is doing well. He's still active on his profile, so hopefully he's doing well. If you see this video, reach out, and I hope you're doing well. And yeah, just anyone watching, I hope this is a good reminder to keep control of your addictions and be very, very careful of what you let into your life. I once played pedestrian chicken while driving back when I used to be a drug addict. I've been clean from pills for over 3 years now. However, at the peak of my addiction, about 6 or 7 years ago, I would mix heavy doses of multiple pills combined with alcohol and Zaza, then go out driving. One time, I was messed up driving around with my friend, and I started purposefully veering towards pedestrians, like families pushing prams, old couples, runners, etc., walking on the footpath. And then at the last moment, when I got real close, I would quickly turn away and straighten up in the lane. I guess the intention was to freak them out and get a reaction, which of course it did. I remember doing it maybe 3 or 4 times that day. My friend's reaction was complete shock, and I guess in my state I found that amusing. Could have easily lost control in my drugged up state and crippled someone for life or killed them. I can't ask anyone for forgiveness, seeing as I'm not religious, but damn, do I feel like a piece of shit when I reflect on this sometimes. I can't forgive myself. Anyway, after many DUIs and car crashes and narrowly escaping death numerous times, I eventually went to rehab, sobered up, and no longer own a car or drive. I am so lucky to escape having caused no lasting injury to anyone, including myself. Still, when I'm alone with my thoughts, the day I played Russian roulette with other people's lives, just for kicks, will always return to haunt me. I smoked crystal, and it was the most terrifying experience of my life. It was about 8 days ago, and today is the first day I felt somewhat normal enough to make a post like this. I need to talk to someone about it, but the earliest therapy appointment I could book was on February 5th, and I don't want to talk to family about this, nor do I want to put it on Facebook. Anyway, it started with drinking alcohol, the real gateway drug, and a penchant for putting myself in precarious situations. So, last weekend, after drinking at my friend's house, I was going to hop on the bus and go home. But on the way back, I ended up getting into a conversation with these homeless people. My inhibitions and guard were lowered, so I ended up going back to their tent with them and hanging out for a while. I've been homeless in the past, so this, along with being really drunk, made the situation seem a lot more normal than it really was. They asked if I wanted to smoke some clear, and I impulsively said yes. Of course, I was paying. When we got back in the tent and the crystal was in the pipe, we smoked it, and I smoked probably way more than a first-time user would usually smoke. Besides 2 or 3 hours of feeling pretty nice, the whole thing was fucking horrific. First things first, I was hot as fuck, and the foulest, most unnatural sweaty smell was emanating from my body. But no matter how much deodorant or soap I used, nothing could make me smell better. Secondly, the feeling never seemed to ever wear off. And I don't mean in a good way. The fun part is over very quickly. After that, you become like a rat in a cage, just a slave to your impulses and what the crystal does to you. And the amount I smoked kept me up for over 3 days, and I was actually trying to go to bed. I took Tylenol PM and everything. I spent the first 12 hours with an insanely unnatural, intimate drive, and I even hired a lady of the night to be with, but I was tweaking too hard to even calm down, and I couldn't get bricked. So I ended up just getting a hotel and snooking it a lot. But I couldn't even enjoy that because that's when the psychosis kicked in. By this point, I hadn't really slept, so I started having auditory and visual hallucinations, like hearing sirens and imagining that there were people outside my hotel window. I probably spent like 12 hours peeking out of the window blinds, looking for cops or people who might be coming to kill me. And people, I shit you not, this is not like weed paranoia or any other kind of hallucinations you've ever had. I literally thought there were people outside my window. I even called the hotel front desk twice to ask them to tell the people to stop gathering outside my window. And I felt so fucking dumb and confused when the guy came out and checked and told me there were no people there. That was more or less the story of the next couple of days. I was feeling progressively worse and worse, and just wanting more than anything to no longer have crystal in my system. But the paranoia and hallucinations were still going strong. I was tweaking and jerking my head around every time I thought I heard a siren or someone walking behind me, and probably looked crazy as fuck to people on the street. It got to the point where I was losing touch with reality, and I had no clue if I was imagining conversations or if they were really happening. I kept hoping that it wasn't permanent and that it'd be okay after the crystal wore off. Luckily, that seems to be the case. I do feel a little weird still, but I think part of that is just being really shaken by the experience. After 3 days of everyone looking at me like I was a monster, smelling like unnatural demon sweat, and almost losing my mind, I was finally able to get some sleep. And it took me about 4 days to finally start to feel better. I am entering outpatient rehab next week because if I hadn't been drinking so much, I wouldn't have gotten in such a horrible situation in the first place. Crystal was the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced. But if the experience helps me live a life free of alcohol and other drugs, then I guess it was a good thing in the long run. I bullied my brother to the point his own life. And that is just how the title reads. It's a little bit wonky. I don't know why, but let's get into the post. Hello. This is a little hard to type out, but I feel I must tell someone about what I've done years ago. This whole entire thing took years to even develop before he couldn't take it anymore. I used to be an only child until my little brother came along. I think the main reasons I've even bullied him was because I was jealous how much attention he was receiving from my parents. It started off as normal siblings. We would be kind to each other, play with each other, but eventually I grew to hate him about 4 years after he was born. We would always fight, hit each other. Obviously, every time I hit him, he would cry, but that never stopped me from doing so. Despite getting shouted at by parents that would only fuel my anger with him, I was always a troublemaker at school, would start fights with other kids, using lame insults that would make the kids upset. I never knew to contain my anger. Now back to my brother. While he was in grades 7 through 10, I would always shit talk him, despite him always being kind to me, wanting to hang out with me. Yet I always turned him down and insulted him. Even with his schooling, he would be a straight A student. I would still talk down on him about how stupid he is, why is he even alive, how spoiled he is. No matter what he did, it would always piss me off in some way or another. He was a very kind brother. Despite how he would sometimes mimic some of the bad stuff he'd see online, all he needed was to be guided properly. By an older brother, he never got. Instead, he would be physically and verbally abused by his older brother, not knowing exactly why. But before he could even get the chance to graduate high school and go to college, he ended up committing S-word. Family and friends never knew why, but obviously I did. It never sunk in what I caused until a month after, when we were at his funeral. Years has passed since the incident, and I still cry thinking about the way I treated him. It pains me very much to even type this out. Always frustrated at what I've done in the past. Took away a life of a wonderful little brother. Took away his future before we even became proper siblings. I'll never see him grow up anymore, nor will anything I do atone for my actions. I will carry this burden that I've brought upon myself until the day I die. I'm sorry for what I've done. I've straightened up my life, never resorting to violence with other people or doing anything horrible to others. Will live the rest of my life being an honest and kind person, someone that my brother could have looked up to. Thank you for reading. And man, that is just so sad. These posts in today's video are just crazy. But let's get into some top comments. Someone says, "You were his burden in life. Now he will be the burden the rest of yours." And wow, that is a hell of a way to put it. You were his burden in life, and now he will be your burden. Wow. That just really hits hard. And that's just the top comment. That is just, wow, that really hits hard. He put it perfectly. I mean, wow. Someone else says, "I have no words." Someone replies saying, "My thoughts too. I have nothing positive to say, so I'll keep moving." And Jesus Christ, man. What a post. In the final comment I'll read on this post, someone says, "My sister was like you. I still suffer psychologically every single day. It took her moving across the country for us to get along. This is your punishment. You get to live with what you did." And wow. And this is the only single post on the entirety of the OP's profile. This is the only post, no comments, no anything. And the OP's name is nothing but regrets. Jeez. This post just hit really hard. I mean, that is just such a depressing situation because obviously the OP now has to live with that burden that he bullied his brother to death, really. And his brother is now no longer living and can no longer live the life he could have lived. And yeah, that is just so shocking and so sad. Such a sad situation. I tricked mentally ill and poor people into doing degrading stuff on camera. Exactly as the title says, A couple of years ago, I was heavily into booger sugar, so my friends and I would stay up all night just talking to each other in my apartment for many nights in a row. Most people who have done a lot of drugs know that playing video games and watching movies is really not that fun to do while doing lines all night. So we started doing a lot of weird things, like this instead. One night, for some reason, we started messing with this mentally ill guy who we went to school with on Facebook, who thinks he died when he crashed his car on drugs a couple of years back and got a major psychosis from the incident. The guy now fully believes he is dead and makes these weird Facebook rants, telling people he is seen and talking to angels and demons and that he is dead. One night, we call up the guy, posing as a local newspaper that wants to write an article about him. He and my friend had the strangest conversation ever. He kept the conversation going for almost 2 hours, while I recorded for the whole thing as an MP3 on my phone. The next day, I presented the clip to all of my friends who were totally ecstatic, and we all think it's the funniest thing we've ever heard. We start messing with this guy almost every night after work, writing him as God, making him record weird songs from heaven and hell, making him take weird photos of himself, etc. But after a week of shenanigans, his caretaker or whoever makes him delete his Facebook account because the rants online are getting out of control. After realizing that messing with this guy was funny as shit, but that we could no longer do it, we started looking for new victims. First, we start trolling our local high school's Facebook group, posing as this pair of effed up parents, but are eventually found out and kicked out. Then we start trolling the local vegans selling horse meat and other stuff, but eventually they make the group private and only members they know personally can join. After that, we start trolling all sorts of local groups on Facebook. To join these local groups, you have to have an account that looks somewhat believable. So we would go on these religious boards and make posts praising God. That shit gets a lot of activity. And just start adding people until we had a ton of friends and the account would look somewhat real. The people most active on these religious boards are people from places in Africa that are very poor. And these people are willing to do anything for a couple of bucks. So we will start calling up random strangers that look like they are willing to do anything for money, sending them a bit of cash via Western Union to make them try and do backflips while I record it. That crazy part is that once you send that first dollar, they know that there's more where it's coming from, and you now have your own personal gesture overseas, and they will do literally anything as long as you send them that first bit of cash. So then it became almost like a new addiction for me. I was promising these poor people a big cash prize. Of course, there was no prize if they did what I told them to do on the webcam so I could record it. The most effed up part is that I enjoyed doing it and found it hilarious. I used to only do it with friends so we all could laugh at it together. But later, I often just sat alone, calling/writing these poor people and making them do weird and degrading stuff on webcam. Jeez, man. And now let's get into some top comments. Someone says, "This is definitely a confession. Yikes." And yeah, this is horrible. I missed the birth of my daughter because I was high on H. I stayed away from drugs all throughout my youth, but after college, I started experimenting and I ended up getting addicted to the big H. It completely destroyed my life. I lost my job, my girlfriend, my apartment, pretty much all of my friends, and I spent 2 months living on the street. When I was 25, I joined a support group and I managed to get clean and get my life back together. At almost the exact moment I had been clean for 1 year, I met my wife. I had been with many women when we met, but from our first date, I knew that I wanted to marry her, and I took the timing as a sign. I proposed to her on our 1-year anniversary and she said yes. We got married 3 months later, and 4 months after that, she fell pregnant. I was excited at first, but after a little while, I began to worry about the responsibility. Once you have a child, you're stuck with the responsibility for life. You can't just quit like you can a job. You can't just move once you get tired of being in the same spot, because you'll completely uproot his or her life and everything he or she knows. What if I fall in love with my child and then she divorces me and gets full custody? If she has my child and then leaves, she can claim child support and I have virtually no say. She can essentially make me into an indentured servant. If I'm making $80,000 a year and she leaves me, a judge can force me to pay that rate of child support even if I can't find another job that'll pay me that much. And if I don't, then I'll be put in jail. I love her with all my heart, but if she gets bored of me and decides to leave, she can use all of these things against me. Do I really want to risk it? I was pretty scared of the whole thing, but it was happening now and there was no way out. All of the pressure made me just start thinking about doing H again. Maybe if I could just do it one more time, I'd get it out of my system and then I can move forward. It kept bouncing around in my head, and when my wife was almost 5 months pregnant, I did H for the first time in almost 3 years. 2 weeks shy of being 3 years clean. This is the last time, I said. Then later that week, I did it again and I told myself, all right, this really is the last time. Just like that, I was hooked again. She noticed that I was acting weird, but she knew that I was really nervous about having a child, so she gave me space. When she was about 30 weeks pregnant, she went into labor. She had been having contractions most of the night, but her doctor said not to worry. The morning she went into labor, I told her that I was going fishing with my friends, but the truth is that I spent the whole day lying on a mattress in a storage shed high on H. When I woke up, I had 39 missed calls, and I'm not sure how many messages. When I realized what was going on, I cleaned myself up and got down to the hospital as quickly as I could, but I'd missed everything. Her mom and sister were there. My wife was just as happy to see me, but her mom gave me a big lecture about how irresponsible I was. I apologized profusely and lied about my phone being out of range. Our daughter is 14 weeks old now. It's been really difficult, but I haven't done drugs since that day. I don't remember it being this difficult last time. My wife knows that I used to be addicted to H, but she doesn't know that I started using again. I want to tell her that I slipped up, but I don't want her to doubt my ability to take care of our family, and I don't want her to think that I'll be a bad father. And oh my God, that is such a heartbreaking post. So heartbreaking. I can't imagine being the OP, waking up and seeing you missed your daughter's birth. And the reason you missed it was because you were strung out. God, that is just so horrifying. Now let's get into some comments. Someone says, I know it's hard right now, but you really need to find a professional to talk to. We can't go through stuff like this alone. Having a kid is challenging and it's an identity shift for everyone. My wife relapsed a month after we brought our son home after 10 years of sobriety. It wasn't H, but she was sneaking hard liquor. I suspected and she lied to me about it. Not good. The best thing she did for herself and me was to be honest with me and get help. She's much more stable now, and the relapse was a blip on the radar, but she had some serious stuff to process through. Therapy was vital for her healing. Also, your wife has a right to know what's going on with you. Wait until you're getting help, but don't drag your feet. H is no joke, as you know, and it's not safe for you or your baby for your wife to not know about your struggles. Please don't try to tough it out or man up or whatever. You'll feel better with support. And yeah, this is just insane. And it goes for all of you and goes without saying, if you are struggling with addiction, please get help and do not try to do it by yourself. And all right, guys, with that last one, that wraps up some shocking Reddit confession threads. What were your thoughts on today's video? I thought they were, like the title says, shocking. I thought they were pretty depressing and sad, but hopefully you kind of enjoyed the video or learned something or got a moral from some of these stories. I feel like I always learn something from recording these videos and learn that, you shouldn't take your life for granted, because at any moment it can end or you can be diagnosed with something or whatever. And be careful with addiction and all of those things. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I just want to say thank you so much for watching the end of the video. It means the world. Check out some other videos on the channel if you enjoyed this one. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Most people are familiar with the FBI's most wanted list. Faces on posters, public tips, and nationwide manhunts. But today, we're getting into a different list. A list most people never see. Because the CIA doesn't have a most wanted list. They keep a targets captured list. No bounties, no press, no warnings. Just silent pursuit until the target is either captured or eliminated. If the CIA targets you, it's not a question of if, only when they'll take you out. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. The channel's goal is 1 million subscribers. And without further ado, let's get into the CIA's Most Wanted Explained. And before we begin, a quick note, the CIA doesn't maintain a public most wanted list and anything current is classified. So in this video, we'll be covering individuals whose cases have been declassified, targets who have already been captured, exposed, or neutralized. And these are the men the CIA eventually let the world see. Rafael Caro Quintero. Rafael Caro Quintero, or Rafa for short, was a Mexican drug trafficker in the 70s and 80s. He was long described as the co-founder of the Guadalajara cartel and as one of the godfathers of the modern Mexican drug trade. Let's call it the G cartel for short, considering just how hard the name is to say over and over again. The G cartel was one of the first ever cartels to traffic booger sugar and cannabis into the US in the late 70s. But having a big cartel and title like the Godfather isn't enough for the CIA to come after you. You'd barely be a speck on their radar. The DEA, on the other hand, would be very interested in talking to you, but that's where it all went south. Rafa was born on the 24th of October 1952 in La Noria, a tiny village buried in a region full of major drug traffickers. He was the oldest of 12 children. His father was a farmer that died when Rafa was just 14 years old. He worked with his mother to take care of his family, becoming the next head of the house. 2 years later, he left the village and settled down in Cabaraca, a bigger town, where he became a rancher. Through all this time, he claimed his highest level of education was the first year of primary school. He worked as a rancher for another 2 years before he met Pedro Aviles Perez at 18. At this time, he had been working as a truck driver for a while, as well as other odd jobs such as working in a bean and corn plantation, anything to make ends meet. Pedro was a Mexican drug trafficker that taught him the art of planting marijuana, and so Rafa used some of his family's land to do so. But eventually he left his home state altogether to join the drug trade in Chihuahua. Caro grew more and more marijuana on his brother's ranch, before earning enough to buy several other ranches in the surrounding areas, becoming richer, as well as becoming a lot more powerful. Soon enough, he formed the G cartel, with a few others in the late 70s. This cartel pioneered the drug trade. It was the first to do it, before almost anyone else on such a large scale. He began trafficking drugs into the US, and in only a few years was being described in Mexican media as one of the narco de narcos. He expanded the cartel even further, building the huge Rancho Buffalo weed plantation in Chihuahua, estimated to be around 1,000 hectares, roughly the size of an entire small town. This massive plantation would be used to produce billions of dollars worth of marijuana. It wasn't very long-lived though. On November 14th, 1984, over 450 Mexican soldiers raided the ranch. They were acting on DEA intelligence and were armed, had helicopters, and successfully achieved their objective of seizing and burning the G cartel's product, wiping out 4,000 to 5,000 metric tons of marijuana. That's the same weight as around 1,000 fully grown elephants. This was marijuana worth several $1 billion. That's back in the early 80s. That'd be worth around $10 billion now. Rafa was angry. His beautiful ranch and marijuana all burnt to the ground. He wasn't just going to sit there and take it, and so he made possibly the worst decision that secured his fate. Remember how I said that simply being a drug lord isn't enough to get yourself on the CIA's radar? Well, Rafa's following actions was more than enough for the CIA to step in. He retaliated against the DEA by abducting undercover DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena in broad daylight. If there's one thing governmental agencies hate more than drug lords, it's public humiliation. Another DEA agent was abducted on the same day, a pilot, Alfredo Zavala Avalar, who was flying reconnaissance. This all took place on the afternoon of February 7th, 1985. The abducted agents were taken to the heart of the cartel city of Guadalajara, the house proudly owned by Rafael Caro Quintero. The agents were tortured for an agonizing 30 whole hours before being murdered. Their bodies were found a month later, on March 5th, wrapped in plastic, buried in a shallow grave. And this launched the DEA's largest homicide investigation to date, Operation Leyenda. He was eventually arrested for the first of many times on April 4th, 1985. But how? Well, the DEA wasn't working alone. As it turns out, the CIA had kept tabs on Rafa for a while, but right after the kidnapping, they went all out. They gathered as much information on Rafa as possible to capture and arrest him, information the DEA would have never been able to get on their own. Once he'd been arrested, the CIA never took him off their radar. A year later, on January 12, 1986, they made a surprise, forceful search on Rafa's prison. They seized electrical appliances, jewels, and money, which added up to over 300 million pesos, worth almost 50 million US dollars today. The authorities blamed the guards for the corruption, and the guards blamed the authorities. He was extradited to Mexico on charges of murdering a DEA agent and sentenced to 199 years in prison for his crimes. The USA still has him listed as a wanted fugitive, waiting for their chance to put him on trial and sentence him their way. He was transferred from prison to prison, all while continuing to run his criminal enterprise from behind bars. He created money laundering fronts with gas stations, construction companies, shoe factories, restaurants, real estate, and much, much more. He was tossed around justice systems, and finally, on February 27, 2025, the Mexican government sent him to the United States of America so that they could finally have their day in court. The CIA, DEA, and DOJ will all be prosecuting Rafael Caro Quintero for his crimes. Abd al-Rahim al-Nashiri. Abd al-Nahim Hussein Muhammad Abdul al-Nashiri, well, that's a mouthful, was born on January 5th, 1965 at Mecca. He is one of the most notorious individuals out there, being accused for the bombing of the USS Cole and other maritime attacks. He's also suspected of heading al-Qaeda operations in the Persian Gulf region, but in his case, the CIA's treatment of him is also criminal in nature. Although he was born in 1965, it was only when he was in his late 20s that he started taking action. He moved to Afghanistan in the early 90s to participate in attacks against the Russians in the region, with the USA supporting the Mujahideen's actions at the time. In 1996, he ended up meeting Osama bin Laden for the first time. It was here that bin Laden tried convincing him to join al-Qaeda, but al-Nashiri refused because, as it turned out, he found the idea of swearing a loyalty oath to bin Laden as distasteful. He then traveled to his home in Yemen, where he first started getting the ideas for his first operation. These ideas came to shape after he started noticing many US and other foreign ships along the southwest coast of Yemen. He went back to Afghanistan a year later, and this is when he started to take serious action. Nashiri met bin Laden again, but declined to join his group still, instead fighting with the Taliban against the Afghan Northern Alliance, and assisted in the smuggling of 4 anti-tank missiles into Saudi Arabia. He also arranged for to get a Yemeni passport. His cousin was subsequently identified to be one of the S-word bombers in the 1998 US Embassy bombings in Kenya. It was the same year that Nashiri finally joined al-Qaeda, reporting directly to bin Laden. It was nearing the end of the year, 1998. Nashiri planned to attack a US vessel with a boat full of explosives, and bin Laden personally approved of this plan, completely funding it. Nashiri first tried to attack the USS the Civilians as a part of the infamous 2000 Millennium attack plots, but the boat he used for this was way overloaded with explosives and started sinking. His next plan, however, was successful. The USS Cole bombing killed 17 US sailors, injuring several others. He rose up the ranks in Al-Qaeda, becoming the chief of operations for the Arabian Peninsula. He organized the Limburg tanker bombing in 2002, a French ship off the coast of Yemen, and has been part of several other attacks. And the CIA had enough. In November 2002, he was captured in Dubai by the CIA, more notably their SAD or Special Activities Division. Once al-Nashiri was captured, the CIA used various means of torture to get a confession out of him, specifically waterboarding him. All other forms of torture were redacted from the public record. During his trial, in Nashiri's opening statement, he said all the confessions were false, including the French vessel Limburg incident, the USS Cole bombing, the rockets in Saudi Arabia, the plot to bomb American ships in the Persian Gulf, relationships with people committing bombings in Saudi Arabia, Osama bin Laden having a nuclear bomb, and finally a plan to hijack a plane and crash it into a ship. He claimed he faked everything to get out of being tortured, and finally, the true details of his interrogation came to light. They slammed him against a wall, shoved him into a small box, waterboarded him, deprived him of sleeping clothes, and threatened to turn him over to others who would no doubt murder him, or torture him, or worse. They would verbally humiliate him and destroy his dignity. He was thrown around between CIA black sites until they finally got what they wanted out of him. Eventually, the charges were dropped, picked up, countersuits were filed, and the case is still ongoing to this day. Abdullah Öcalan. Abdullah Öcalan, also known as Apo, was born in 1949 in southeast Turkey. His mother was Turkish, while his father was Kurdish, a minority that was often looked down upon. He was born to a peasant family in a village, having vague political dreams when he was younger. He tried enlisting in the military but was refused. He claimed it was due to part of his ethnicity. Öcalan enrolled in university where he studied political science. It was here that Öcalan embraced Marxism and voiced left-wing sentiments. He organized several student movements and handed out leftist brochures, but was imprisoned for this. This forced him to then drop out and return to his village in southeastern Turkey, where he began advocating for an independent Kurdish state. By 1977, Öcalan and two comrades wrote a manifesto, the National Road to the Kurdish Revolution, with this being the blueprint for their political party, the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or the PKK for short. In 1979, unrest in Turkey forced Öcalan and his associates to flee to Syria, where they began training to form the core of the PKK. It took them 7 years, but in 1984, they began an armed campaign for a Kurdish state by attacking a pro-government village in southeast Turkey. Their operations expanded all across southeast Turkey, including ambushes on military patrols, attacking village guards, bombings in cities. The Turkish state responded with a large-scale counterinsurgency campaign, village evacuations, and widespread human rights abuses. Over 30 to 40,000 people died by the late 1990s, many of them being Kurdish civilians. By this time, Turkey, the US, and the European Union designated the PKK as a terrorist organization, holding Öcalan personally responsible for terrorist attacks, becoming Turkey's most wanted fugitive. But through this, there were attempts at remedying the situation. In 1993, the first ceasefire was announced, but collapsed later that year after the Turkish president was assassinated. Both sides blamed each other, and the hell continued until the mid-1990s, where he went back to his base in Syria, overseeing the movement's political and military structure, all while living safely and comfortably under Syrian protection. This wouldn't last long, though, as Turkey threatened Syria with military action if they didn't expel Öcalan, and if they didn't stop supporting the PKK, leading to the 1998 Adana Agreement, where Syria finally kicked him out of the country. He immediately started searching for a new safe haven, practically touring Europe while doing so. He first went to Moscow. A Russian Duma committee initially voted to grant him asylum, but the government didn't want to formally approve it, with Turkey and the US pressuring them not to do so, so he was forced to look somewhere else. Italy was next. Arriving in Rome with a forged passport, the Italian authorities arrested him on an international warrant, but placed him on house arrest in a hospital. Turkey requested Italy to extradite him, but Italy refused as the death penalty is in force in Turkey, and Italy was bound by European human rights standards. Rome couldn't find anyone else to take him, so for the next couple months, he was stuck in Italy. They wouldn't let him leave, but they wouldn't extradite him either. Eventually, the diplomatic pressure and lack of a legal framework forced Italy to release him, where he went to Greece. He was sent from Greece to Kenya to escape European scrutiny, where he was arranged to be brought to the Greek embassy in Kenya, the worst possible option. You might recall I mentioned earlier that it was around this time al-Nashri's cousin was identified as an S-word bomber. The bombing was at the US embassy in Kenya. The country was crawling with US intelligence and special forces. And all this time, the CIA had been waiting to pounce. While he was in Europe, it would have been too risky for them to make a move. He was deep in a legal rabbit hole with way too many countries involved. If anything went wrong, it could destroy US-Europe relations and cause more harm. But when Greece took him in, it gave the US and Turkey an opening to launch their operations. As soon as he landed in Kenya, the Greek embassy was placed under surveillance. His cell phones were tapped, monitoring his conversations with political contacts as he sought asylum. He was abducted in Kenya while on his way from the Greek embassy to the airport in Kenya, an operation carried out by the CIA in the Turkish National Intelligence Organization. His trial was rigged from the start, with many people suspecting heavy CIA involvement and manipulation. His lawyers weren't allowed to meet him, and he wasn't allowed to meet his lawyers. He was interrogated for 10 days without legal counsel, and even the judge took part in his interrogation. Eventually, after a completely unfair legal battle, he was sentenced to death for treason and separatism, also being banned from holding public office for life. His death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment, but some argue that's much worse. Carlos the Jackal. Elich Ramirez Sanchez, or better known as Carlos the Jackal, was born on the 12th of October 1949. Carlos was the son of a Marxist lawyer, Jose Altagracia Ramirez Navas. He was named Elich after Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, a prominent Marxist activist and head of government of Soviet Russia, someone that Carlos's father clearly looked up to. He named his other children Lenin and Vladimir. Considering this, Carlos grew up in a very political environment in Venezuela. He joined the youth movement of the Venezuelan Communist Party and even spent summer camp at Camp Matanzas, a guerrilla warfare school run by the Cuban Intelligence Directorate, basically Cuba's version of the CIA. The same year, his parents divorced. His mother took him to London, where she tried to enroll him to the University of Paris, but eventually he ended up at the Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow. At the time, it was considered a notorious hotbed for recruiting foreign communists to the Soviet Union. Put simply, it was a political warfare program. 2 years later, though, in 1970, he was expelled from the university. If you manage to get yourself suspended from a school that's meant to radicalize you and prepare you to serve for the Soviet Union through espionage, sabotage, propaganda, and even assassination, something must be wrong with you. Shortly after being expelled, he volunteered for the Popular Front of the Liberation, or the PFLP, of Palestine, and was sent to a training camp. Once he graduated, he studied at a finishing school, codenamed H4, staffed entirely by Iraqi military near the Syria-Iraq border. And you can slowly see where this is going, being tossed around a political environment, learning and growing under extremely radical political teachings. He was given the name Carlos the Jackal during his time at the PFLP, after a recruiting officer gave him the codename Carlos, considering his South American roots. And he was consistently called the Jackal after The Guardian. The news outlet found a copy of the novel The Day of the Jackal in one of Carlos's old apartments. They then released a headline calling him Carlos the Jackal, and the rest was history. Once he completed guerrilla training, Carlos played an active role for the PFLP in North Jordan during the Black September conflict of 1970. The Black September conflict is often called the Jordanian Civil War and was an armed conflict between the PFLP and the King of Jordan, King Hussein. He built his reputation as a fighter during this conflict and was sent for even further training. Eventually, he left the Middle East and attended the Polytechnic of Central London, now known as the University of Westminster, while still working for the PFLP. 3 years later, in 1973, he carried out his first assassination on Joseph Saif, a Jewish businessman and vice president of the British Zionist Federation. It was on the 30th of December, Carlos called Joseph's home and ordered Joseph's maid to take him to Joseph. Carlos found Joseph in the bathroom, in his bath, and fired one bullet which bounced off Joseph just between his nose and upper lip, knocking Joseph unconscious, but didn't kill him. The Tokarev 7.62mm pistol subsequently jammed, forcing Carlos to flee the scene. The attack was announced as a retaliation for the Mossad's assassination in Paris of Mohammed Boudia, a leader of the PFLP. This was the first of many failures Carlos faced. He also admitted responsibility for a failed bomb attack on the bank Hapo Alim in London. His next attack, however, being the car bomb attacks on 3 French news outlets, accused of being pro-Israel. He also claimed to be the grenade thrower at a French restaurant, which ended up killing 2 people and injuring 30. This was a part of the 1974 French embassy attack in The Hague, which took place in the Netherlands. He also took part in 2 failed rocket-propelled grenade attacks on Israeli aeroplanes at the Orly Airport near Paris in January 1975. The second attack led to a gunfight with the police at the airport and a 17-hour hostage standoff. It involved hundreds of riot police and the French Interior Minister. Carlos fled during the gunfights, while the other PFLP terrorists were allowed to Baghdad, Iraq. By now, government agencies internationally were starting to take notice, including the FBI and the CIA. In June 1975, one of Carlos's contacts were captured, Michel Mourkab, being interrogated by French intelligence. He told the agents that during a Parisian house party, 2 unarmed agents began interrogating Carlos, where he shot and killed them, escaping to Beirut. This catapulted Carlos to the top of the French and international wanted lists. In Beirut, he planned out the attack on the headquarters of OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, in Vienna. On the 21st of December 1975, a 6-person team was led by Carlos, which attacked a meeting which had all the major OPEC leaders present. More than 60 hostages were taken, with 3 being killed: an Austrian policeman, an Iraqi OPEC employee, and a member of the Libyan delegation. Carlos's demands: Austrian authorities read a communique about the Palestinian cause on Austrian radio and television networks every 2 hours to avoid the threatened execution of a hostage every 15 minutes. The Austrian government agreed, and the communique was broadcasted as demanded. A day later, on the 22nd of December, the government provided PFLP and 42 hostages an airplane, which took them to Algeria, Libya, and back to Algeria, where many terrorists were granted asylum and hostages were freed. Soon after, however, a fellow PFLP agent accused Carlos of having received a large sum of money, somewhere around $20 million to $50 million, for the release of Arab hostages. Carlos claimed that it was the money paid by the Saudis on behalf of the Iranians and was diverted en route and lost by the revolution. Carlos then left Algeria and attended a meeting of senior PFLP officials to justify his failure in executing 2 senior OPEC hostages, them being the finance minister of Iran and the oil minister of Saudi Arabia. They eventually decided that he failed the mission and expelled him. A bounty was then put on his head. with 4 men traveling to Tehran in 1976 to kill Carlos, but it was never revealed what happened in those meetings. Not long after, Carlos attempted to build his own independent network called the Organization of Ahmed Arab Struggle, but this didn't last long. Years passed as he tried and failed to set up his organization, which resulted in the Syrian government forcing to expel him. He searched for over 2 years trying to find a country where he could seek asylum when he settled in Sudan. But by this time, enough was enough. In 1993, CIA contractor Billy Waugh was tasked with finding Carlos and arresting him. They searched for 4 months, managing to identify a man who was working as a bodyguard for Carlos, and watched him until the bodyguard led them to Carlos's apartment on the 8th of February, 1994. They established an observation post in an abandoned hospital across the street and watched him for another 4 months, eventually handing their intel to French intelligence. French intelligence offered the Sudanese government tons of communication equipment and supplied them with satellite pictures of everything they needed. The Sudanese foreign minister was invited to Paris to negotiate the extradition of Carlos, but he was adamant that his culture forbade him from giving up a guest in his country. But eventually, they convinced him. All it took to give up Carlos was the promise of World Bank and IMF aid to help ease their foreign debt, as well as videos and photos of Carlos partying, drinking, and being intimate with women, which offended their Muslim faith. In the eyes of the foreign minister, Carlos turned from a combatant, someone who fought for the Palestinian cause, to a hoodlum. His trial stretched on until the 23rd of December 1997, where he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, and later 2 more life sentences were added. Through the years, Carlos has continuously voiced his support for Osama bin Laden and his attacks on the United States. Pablo Escobar. He's one of the most infamous drug lords out there. While the world frowns upon him, the streets of Medellin cheer his name. Born on the 1st of December in Rio Negro, Colombia, Pablo Escobar was dealt a rough hand, being born in poverty among 6 other siblings. He struggled hard. Life wasn't easy for him on the streets, with him leaving to be with his cousin when he was just 17. Coming back a couple years later, he decided to start the first of many criminal activities, just to make some money, creating and selling fake high school diplomas. Unknowing to him, this would be the first of many illegal activities he'd carry out. He dropped out not long after, continuing to sell even more butcher diplomas now that he was out of high school, with this being the small start to what ended up being one of the world's most illegal industries to date. After high school, Escobar didn't give up on his education just yet. He went to college. His goal was set to be a criminal lawyer, a politician, and eventually El Presidente. His goals were ambitious, but he worked hard. Sadly, that wasn't enough. As hard as he worked, he was forced to drop out because of his poverty. He couldn't pay for his education, marking the beginning of his criminal career. Not being able to put food on the table and knowing no other way to make ends meet other than all of the illegal happenings he'd been exposed to ever since he was a kid, Escobar began his illegal activities almost immediately after dropping out of the Universidad Autónoma Latinoamericana and started a wide range of criminal activities. Starting small, Escobar sold illegal cigarettes and fake lottery tickets. He took tombstones, sandblasted their inscriptions, and resold them. Compared to his more well-known drug empire, this was pretty tame. However, his way of life turned from a life of harmless crime to violent acts pretty quickly. Soon enough, Escobar knew his way around the streets and started joining gangs to steal cars off the road. They went around in gangs and groups to commit motor vehicle theft, but his connections and actions raised him up in the food chain. Controlling these gangs, his crimes became more violent, employing criminals. He sent them to kidnap various people who owned him and demanded ransoms. Escobar's gang started becoming notorious for kidnapping and demanding ransoms from people, but their name and reputation was very well known after kidnapping and killing Diego Echeverria, a famous local businessman. The family of Diego paid Escobar $50,000, putting his and his gang's name on the map. For about a decade now, Escobar was smooth sailing. With him being involved in leading organized crime for this long, nothing seemed like it could go wrong. Until it did. At this point in time, around 1975, booger sugar trade was on the rise. Escobar saw this and thought nothing of it, jumping on the train, trafficking booger sugar throughout South America. But he was rising and growing too fast. Colombian authorities finally caught wind of his activities and caught him trafficking almost 40 kilograms of booger sugar in his spare tire through Ecuador. Things were over. He was arrested in May 1976, returning from Ecuador. However, things didn't quite play out in the way the Colombian Security Services, or DAS, thought it would. After getting the first judge removed from the lawsuit, he bribed the second judge for a verdict in his favor, and he and all the other prisoners involved were let go. Simple as that. This is when he learned the power that money holds. He bribed tons of officials and politicians to gain more and more power and control, giving them the carrot or the stick, or as he put it, silver or lead. It was as simple as you accept the bribes, you get paid. If you reject them, you get assassinated. This was his intimidation method. With money, he could do anything. Nobody could stand in his way. If they did, they'd either move aside for the cash or he'd force them to. Soon he realized the true potential he held, so he put his plan into motion. Bribing several Colombian politicians, he had them in his pocket, both conservative and liberal parties. His goal wasn't power, yet it was self-preservation, safety, and ensuring the law wouldn't be an issue to him ever again. Finally, every politician he had in his pocket was elected, giving him access to almost every level of the Colombian government, pulling strings like he was playing puppets. In fact, he was doing just that. Now that he had taken care of the authorities, it was time for him to get moving on the ever-increasing booger sugar trade. Unknowing to Escobar, would be one of the final nails in the coffin for him. In April 1978, he met with drug lords, speaking with them about what was most likely trafficking booger sugar. This was later confirmed when around 19,000 kilograms, or 190 tons of booger sugar, entered U.S. soil and territory. And from here on out, it was exponential growth. Demand for booger sugar in the United States was higher than ever, so naturally, Escobar did what he had to do with the supply. After the first trade of 190 tons, the Medellin cartel expanded rapidly. More shipments were used for smuggling, more routes were created, and more main entry points into the U.S. were formed in California, South Florida, and Puerto Rico, with other parts of the country being used as well. Later, Escobar and his cartel co-founder Carlos Lajer worked on a new transshipment point on an island in the Bahamas known as Norman's Cay. It was about 220 miles southeast from the coast of Florida. However, Escobar never bought this island. Lajer had it as his own solo venture, while Escobar transformed it into a paradise for both luxury and trafficking booger sugar into the United States. Escobar bought most of the land on the island, which had a 1-kilometer airstrip constructed, a harbor, hotels, houses, boats, aircrafts, and a massive refrigerated warehouse to store, well, guess what? Booger sugar. For the next 4 years, this was the route mainly used by the Medellin cartel. It was efficient and got the job done right. It generated hundreds of millions of dollars in profit, which he used to buy over 20 square kilometers of land in Antigua to build his hacienda. This mansion had a zoo, a private lake, a sculpture garden, and tons of other amenities for his family and members of the cartel to enjoy. This was the height of his wealth, controlling 80% of the global booger sugar supply from mainly that single island, raking in hundreds of millions in net profit every single week. He was a billionaire. Compared to today, he would be in the top 25 richest people in the world. The wealth he gained from his drug trade had made him unstoppable. With almost infinite resources, he could accomplish anything, even doing the government's job for them. The power he held over one of the strongest world governments and even puppeteering his own government is something completely unprecedented and something that will most likely never be able to happen again. As far as he had come, he didn't forget his roots. He financed the development of several Medellin's poverty-stricken neighborhoods and built housing, schools, hospitals, churches, and football stadiums. In 1980, he joined politics, something he had been dreaming for since high school. He was involved and supported in the formation of the Liberal Party of Colombia, and 2 years later ended up getting into the Colombian Congress. This was not a plan or a ploy for his cartel or drug empire. Escobar knew he had to do right by his people and wanted to make real changes to his homeland. He was granted parliamentary immunity and the right to a diplomatic passport, and was very well known for all of his charities and his philanthropic nature. The public loved him. He felt like a king, and he might as well have been one. He was in the perfect position he'd been dreaming of since day one. Nothing could stop him now. Everything was smooth sailing from here on out, or so he thought. But his entry into politics would be cut short from day one, when the Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, had accused him of illegal activities on his first day in Congress. Things were looking bad for Escobar, as the subordinates of Lara Bonilla started investigating his arrest for the 39 kilos of booger sugar smuggled and trafficked in from Ecuador. And only a couple months after the investigation started, the Liberal Party leader expelled him from the party. Escobar fought back, denying the accusations, but to no result. He announced his retirement from politics just 4 years after he had started in January of 1984. Lara Bonilla was assassinated 3 months later. Escobar was wanted, and while bribing and murdering worked everywhere else, he couldn't get his control over the Colombian judiciary. In the fall of '85, bribing and murdering several judges, Escobar requested the government for a conditional surrender, where he wouldn't be extradited to the United States. This was denied at first. However, after forming an organization known as the Los Extraditable Organization, he created to fight the extradition policy in Colombia. Near the end of '86, the policy was declared illegal as being signed by a presidential delegation, not the president himself. Since the president at the time did not sign it himself, the policy was declared illegal and Escobar had won over the judiciary. However, soon enough, the new president had put the decision on review, with his victory being short-lived at best. However, Escobar had moved past that, still holding a grudge against the Liberal Party leader, to which he had him assassinated for kicking him out of the party and politics as a whole. But that wasn't the end. He wanted to cripple the party. The leader's next in line was scheduled for a flight on 18th of August 1989, on which a bomb was planted. Avincia Flight 203 was destroyed, with all 107 people on board dying, except for one man, the successor to the Liberal Party leader, who survived as he had missed the plane. His life was intact, but only by chance and luck. Escobar had murdered 107 innocent people, among which were 2 American nationals, and this is when the American government had decided to intervene directly. After this tragedy, the president's administration at the time moved against Escobar and associated drug cartels. After negotiations with the government, Escobar agreed to surrender and cease all criminal activity in exchange for a reduced sentence and preferential treatment. Escobar gave himself up to authorities in 1991, and with the new constitution passed the same year, he was not extradited to the US. While the act was highly controversial at the time due to people speculating whether Escobar, along with several other drug lords with power within the government, had forced their hand, Escobar was relaxing in his own luxurious private prison, which was better than most people's homes. Serving time in La Catedral, he had a football pitch, a giant dollhouse, a bar, a jacuzzi, and even an entire waterfall. However, reports that he kept his criminal enterprise going were surfacing. Public outcry started to pile up. And because of this, the Colombian government was forced to move Escobar into a traditional prison, one with bars on the cells and metal trays for food. But Escobar knew what was coming, and being prepared for this was an understatement. Pablo Escobar proceeded to make one of the greatest prison escapes ever known to man, even to this day. When special forces raided the prison, he held 2 VIPs who came along as hostages, then shut off the power. The army was in the dark, unable to shoot or see. For 12 hours, they remained in the prison, while Escobar had escaped ages ago into the forest, humiliating the government. And from here on out, he was on the run. Wanted by the Colombian government, the United States government, and under siege from a rival cartel, everywhere Escobar turned was an enemy. All this while, however, the CIA was at just as big as a loss as Escobar. They'd spent hundreds of millions of dollars on finding him, and now they're cooperating with 2 different militaries, as well as an entirely separate special task force created with the sole purpose of finding and capturing or killing Escobar. Search Block was an ad hoc special operations unit of the National Police of Colombia. It had over 600 members trained by the United States and Colombian Army, a special task force designated to locate and disassemble cartels and their leaders. They were heavily assisted by the CIA in triangulating his position, tapping radio and phone calls, feeding intel to the Search Block, resorting to desperate measures at certain times, hiding in tents, burning millions of dollars in cash to stay warm. Escobar was still a notorious daredevil, as while the entirety of the United States of America were looking for him in a nationwide manhunt, he posed in front of the White House with his son. However, finally, in December 1993, he was found in a middle-class home in suburban Medellin by Colombian authorities with the help of the intel the CIA gave them, where a shootout started between Escobar and the CIA Special Forces. He was trapped, cornered, and for once he'd been outsmarted and outgunned. Survival was the only objective for him at that point. He had to do something. He couldn't just let it all go. He refused to give it up. He had to escape. And then he saw his one chance. Using the last of his strength, he tried to get up on the roof, but it was too late. Escobar was shot and died almost as soon as he trampled onto the roof. His death and funeral was widespread news, with over 25,000 people attending his funeral simply due to the impact he made on his people with all his positive changes to the nation, despite his nefarious crimes. This ended the chapter of the world's most dangerous and powerful drug lords. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Mohammed bin Awad bin Laden, one of history's most notorious terrorists and criminals of all time. Everyone knows just how nefarious he was. He needs no introduction. Instead, I'm going to directly jump into how the CIA killed him, one of their hardest targets to find and kill ever. But before doing that, here's a long laundry list of his acts. He played a key and important role in the Soviet-Afghan War. He was alleged to be involved in the 1988 Gilgit massacre. He created Al-Qaeda, one of the world's worst terrorist organizations ever, was part of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in the Gulf War, was expelled from Saudi Arabia, declared war on America, directed hundreds of terrorist attacks globally, did 9/11, and that was the trigger for the CIA. They began sending troops to Afghanistan to interrogate the Taliban and capture Al-Qaeda operatives. The Special Activities Division was leading the investigation, and the target was clear. Osama bin Laden was wanted, captured, or killed. By 2005, it was made clear that bin Laden was in Pakistan, so they began capturing more and more operatives. Their goal was to find people who had information on top Al-Qaeda leadership, those who could give up someone who was close to bin Laden. And just when they thought they were getting closer, bin Laden would release time-sensitive videos confirming his survival, almost taunting the CIA. It was an unstoppable force against an immovable object. The CIA was tasked with using any means necessary. Hundreds, if not thousands, of CIA black sites were used all over the world to torture and interrogate Al-Qaeda operatives. They would leave these people without food or water for days, stringing their life along hours at a time, manipulating them physically and mentally. The CIA soon realized the focus of the investigation was to be centered on couriers for al-Qaeda, seen as these couriers were the ones who would provide communications for bin Laden. In 2002, interrogators had heard about an al-Qaeda courier who was part of the inner circle, and this courier led the CIA directly to Osama bin Laden. Eventually, bin Laden was traced to a mansion near the border of Pakistan, and this is where they conducted an extremely risky operation. The intel was not 100% accurate, and the mansion was nothing short of a fortress. On May 2nd, 2011, the United States conducted Operation Neptune Spear. Personally approved by Barack Obama, 24 Navy SEALs and 2 Black Hawks took flight to Jalalabad, an Afghan city over 120 miles away. The compound stuck out like a sore thumb to the houses nearby, had a huge wall running across the perimeter, with designs being perfect to hide itself from satellites and any other surveillance. It had no internet, no landline, all garbage was burned, and nobody was let inside. The CIA tried several times, sending in operatives under disguise to try and confirm bin Laden's presence, but failed in all attempts. It was a strong lead. It wasn't surefire, but it was all they had. This is what 10.5 years of investigation from one of the world's most dangerous and powerful intelligence agencies had come up with. Navy SEAL Team 6 infiltrated the compound, cleared it of all residents, before finally, Osama bin Laden was shot and killed. They cleared out the house, taking as much evidence as possible, and exfiltrated. And alright guys, that wraps up the CIA's Most Wanted Explained. I'm sorry this video wasn't like the FBI top 10. The only issue is the CIA doesn't keep a top 10. They are, by no surprise, super secretive about everything. So yeah, this was the most famous cases of the most wanted people by the CIA, and I thought it was a unique video. I haven't seen it on YouTube yet, so I hope you enjoyed. And if you'd like to see an FBI Most Wanted Explained, comment down below. Maybe I'll make one of these every single year and cover some new people that came out from the CIA. I don't know, it could be interesting. Just comment down below if you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. It means the world. And listen to me on Spotify. Join the Patreon for early access. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye.